Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you on the sim racing platform known only as iRacing on the PC. Tonight marks round 11 of the 12-round calendar. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the penultimate round of the series that just keeps on giving with fantastic racing action through and through, battles up and down the field. There's drama, there's controversy, but most importantly of all, there are some fierce and ferocious drivers all looking to compete for the ultimate prizes in this series, and what better way to start to bring the curtain down than with the penultimate round being in Japan at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit. Tonight's focus, of course, is on the Apex Racing Academy lobby, also known as Lobby 1, sponsored, of course, by Apex Racing Academy. And, well, in the commentary box tonight, you have myself, as always. I'm Paul, TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And our schedule for tonight is as follows. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or UTC. At 8 o'clock, so in approximately 14 minutes time, we'll be getting underway for the 15-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of race number 1. Race 1 follows immediately afterwards. That is the sprint race, the 15-minute sprint race, where the strategy is all about getting to the front and gaining maximum possible points. There's no pit stops, it's all about fighting your way to the front and particularly converting a good qualifying session if you have one. After that, we'll be taking a brief break, but not without our post-race interviews with our class winners. That's in the AM, the Pro-Am and the Pro classes. And when we return from the break at approximately 5 to 9, it'll be in the build-up to the feature race, race number 2, at 9 o'clock tonight, the 60-minute race, which is the more strategic race for the all-important mandatory pit stop. Tonight's broadcast, of course, being brought to you via free media platforms for your viewing pleasure. That is firstly on Twitch at my personal Twitch channel, TX141. Secondly, on the Next Gen Racing YouTube channel, that's Next Gen Racing on YouTube. And then last but not least, if you're so Facebook inclined, you can tune in via facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. But without further ado, we should introduce our sponsor for this lobby, and that is Apex Racing Academy. So who are Apex Racing Academy, I hear you ask? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. And in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up now at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. And of course, we're very grateful to continue our partnership with Apex Racing Academy, our partner for Season 1 of the series and back sponsoring Lobby 1 for the purposes of Season 2, and Apex Racing Academy, of course, contributing to the sizable prize pool on offer to our drivers in the Drivers' Championship. And also there are some offshoot prizes outside of the Drivers' Championship, such as, but not limited to, the best, most improved driver, I should say, the most consistent driver, and also the best livery. But speaking of the Drivers' Championship, let's come on to our championship standings after the opening 10 rounds. Well, I say the opening 10 rounds, it's more the case that we are nearing the closure. We can see in the Pro class, firstly, it is the case that Matt Caruana continues to lead after what was a difficult round for the pros at Monza, given the light nature of the pro field with only 6 drivers in attendance, and it meant that a huge amount of points were up on offer, and it was the case that Matt Caruana was able to pick up some good points, particularly in the feature race with the win, meaning he now sits on 334 points, the best part of what is 22 clear of Billy Fletcher. However, Billy Fletcher's not out the hunt yet, the fact on 312 points, and whilst it was a difficult day at Monza, particularly in the feature race, he fought back to pick up some valuable points and match the points haul achieved by Håkon Grebstad on 291. Luke McKeown retiring from what was the feature race, a non-finish due to the wrong car being taken to the circuit, but dominating in the sprint race in the end with that pole position to go with it, and right up front all the way through. It is the case that our top 4 are all within contention for potentially bringing home the Drivers' Championship when all is said and done come round number 12. However, it's not just about the top 4, it's the case as well. Jason Landry, the Delta Motorsport driver, with another good performance at Monza and continuing that trend of improving across the sprint race, as well as being able to master good results in the feature race, picking up some very valuable points and getting him 20 points clear of Kenny Heremans. But outside our top 6, we can see with the non-attendance of what was Tom Edmonds in the feature race, albeit he was not able to finish in the sprint race due to issues with the car, Mark Fletcher, Oistein Hereford and Reese Carroll, we have right now got a hunt on for P6 with Kenny Heremans there, and Kenny Heremans would love to bridge the gap from his pursuers in order to go hunting down at Jason Landry. Outside the top 10, meanwhile, and we could see once again how it was a very sparse pro class last time out at Monza. Robert Sunick in P11 160 points, with Elliot Harper a further 21 points behind. Tom Dadswell not too far behind on 11 points off on 128, and then Deegan Fairclough continuing to pick up points. Well, the sprint race going well for him, but a non-start in the feature race, 112 now to his name. Tom Male completing our top 15, and then James Holman, Anders Vries Ankerson, Callum Brandt, Daniel Blomqvist and Tony Verschaft completing our Pro Drivers' Championship. Meanwhile, the story in the Pro-Am class is a little bit different. We can see that as he is certified in yellow text there, Callum Regarton is your champion in the Pro-Am class. He was able to secure the championship with the win in the sprint, plus also the fastest lap, and also the fastest lap in the feature race, and a second place, which went down to the wire between him and Edward Lack in the feature. But he had a very good and strong performance at Monza, and as a result, it has meant now he has put the Pro-Am championship out of reach of anybody else on 442 points, and it is the case now. He is our champion in the Pro-Am class. However, it's not to say that the Pro-Am class is not going to have any more stories or battles going into the finale, with the fact that right now it is the case that only 17 points separate what is, well, my apologies, not 17, yeah, it is 17 points, I'm doing the maths correctly today. Jean-Louis Deschamps, Ben Hicks and Jeremy DeBoer separated by only 17 points from P2 to P4. Meanwhile, on top of that, we have Daniel Holman there, the Bright Esports driver, who's really had a revival of form since the start of the second half of the season. He right now is only 10 points ahead of Jakob Boschov, with Dirtbouts a further 4 points behind, and Edward Lack only a further 5 points behind them. And don't count out Matthew Hodges or Deirdre Devalaming. It is the case that right now P5 to P10 all have an opportunity over the last 2 rounds to secure what is that 5th place in the championship, and even put some pressure on Jeremy DeBoer if he should drop some points over the course of the last 2 rounds. Outside of the top 10 in the Prams, we can see that Hackenschott continued to pick up points, albeit it was a difficult time at Monza last time out on 197, but he has inched somewhat clear of Phil McDougall, the CXR Project Black driver, who did have a reasonable run in the feature race, but less so in the sprint race. Anthony Beck unable to attend, and as a result not improving his points tally, still on 175, 2 clear of Lucas Romano, who had a race ban going into the sprint race, but was able to pick up 9 points in the feature. Our top 15 being completed by James Slates, and outside the top 15, Peter Lemkins, Paul King, Stephen Norman, Andrew Lovesey and Colin Martin. Meanwhile, in the AM Championship, the complexion is even more tight at the very top of the field. We can see that Matthew Addy and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen are currently tied in the lead for 320 points. It's only on result countback that Matthew Addy is leading the AM Championship, I should say. However, it is the case, it's not just between those two. Matt Emmons and also Jochen Seeger are both well within the hunt still, with the fact that the two of them there are a total of 21 points behind our top 2, and it is the case that any one of those 4 could come home with the AM Championship come the end of the season finale, and tonight's results are going to be critical in seeing how the momentum swings. The momentum, of course, now being between Matthew Addy and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, both of them picking up very good performances at Monza, more so Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen in the feature race, and Matt Emmons not starting in the races at Monza, unable to attend, meaning that now he has got all the weight on his shoulders to deliver in the final 2 rounds. Meanwhile, outside of the top 4, we can see George Bland there, only 2 points clear of Navarro de Bova, and a further 2 points clear of Kurt van Hoenacker, and a further 2 points clear of Alexander Batak. It is the case that right now, P5 through to P8, it is a hot contest to be in the bottom spot of the top 5 when all is said and done. And then we have Arjun Kregel and Morten S. Oosterhuis competing for P9, their 3 points separating the 2 of them. Outside the top 10, we can see that Stefan Tim Koopmans, who unfortunately has not been able to attend recently, on 199 points. Still, if he does attend, has a great chance to try and get back into the top 10 when all is said and done. 4 points ahead of Gus Franken, and then Renaud Vanucek, Jürgen Nocker, Arjen Bakker, Peter Kupiers and Peter Dombrek completing our AM Championship. Now, as for the Constructors' Championship, or the Team Championship, depending on how you want to phrase it, we of course could not bring this to you last time because we hadn't done all the calculations. It is the case going into the final 2 rounds that Luxem 24 with M&V Esports, predominantly made up within the Apex Racing Academy lobby, are currently leading by only a single point over the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby-focused racing team Astra, or Team RTA in short. The 2 of them going toe-to-toe and looking for maximum possible performances and scores in each and every round with that 1 point separation. Next Gen Blue, meanwhile, on 705 points. Now breaking clear of Switchback Motorsport, dropping some significant points over the last couple of rounds, but not so at Monza, in fact, getting a very good score at Monza. The gap between the two teams now in excess of 50 points. Apex with M&V Esports in P5, the best part of 20 points ahead of Team Tetrarouge. Team Tetrarouge continues to put in great performances through and through. TGC Racing, EMP soon, and continue to rise up the standings, with Delta Motorsport only 5 points behind, and then a further 9 points, I should say, down to CXR Project Black. Altitude Esports completing our top 10. Outside the top 10, Challenge B1 still continue that chance to try and get into the top 10 when all is said and done, with NXTGEN Orange only 4 points behind and RD Simsport only a further 2 points behind, but unable to participate at Monza. Challenge BE2, we can see there, with those continuing points coming in as well, 519 points, with Ignium Motorsport rounding off the top 15. Bright Esports continuing their revival of fashion, with Daniel Holmer really leading the charge. Ignium Spark just behind, 10 points behind. SVPMR and P18, Ignium Blaze and RD Simsport 2 completing the top 20. And outside the top 20, it is the case that Team Racing Netherlands Red is the highest placed Team Racing Netherlands or TRN team on 302 points, 7 clear of RP Motorsport Seniors, who in turn are 7 points clear of their fellow team RP Motorsport Experts. Team Racing Netherlands Blue, there's RP Motorsports Rookies, followed by Team Racing Netherlands Orange, DDR, Ignium Motorsport Phoenix, and last but not least, RP Motorsports Juniors. Well, my goodness, the championships could not be closer through and through. And well, where are we tonight? That's the big question. Tonight, we are at Motegi in the Tochigi Prefecture of Japan. This circuit, known as Twin Ring Motegi Grand Prix course, is a very different circuit from what our drivers have seen over the opening 10 rounds. You can see from the circuit map here, provided to us by simracingwiki.com, this circuit looks to be very stop-start in its nature, in terms of the drivers will have very long runs up towards hairpin-style corners, where these will be preceded, these corners, by heavy braking zones. We do have a couple of sweeping sections in between, particularly the sweeping section that runs from turn 5 all the way up to turn 9, which will also prove a challenge, and the run from turn 11 to turn 14. But it is the case around this circuit, it really is all about being able to get on the throttle as soon as possible, coming out of the hairpin style corners and maximising that run down the straight to the next hairpin, as you're about to see from the reference lap as brought to us by Matt Emmons. So charging across the timeline then and heading down towards the opening hairpin known as turns 1 and 2, because it has 2 apexes. The right-hander braking at what will be just after that 100 metres, well, braking about 75 metres and down to second gear and taking a wide run through the opening part of the hairpin so we can get a tighter exit through the part of turn 2, and now charging onto the second straight all the way down to turns 3 and 4, the second hairpin. Making its way up through the gearbox here, up to 5th gear, before braking once again at about 75 metres and coming down to 2nd gear, taking a much tighter entry line this time, because the way the corner is shaped is not symmetrical, and it's the case you want to carry more speed on the run into turn 4. Now the long run down towards turn number 5. You're getting a picture here in a pattern, and as he breaks his way down now into the right angled hairpin, we can see here it's the case he comes all the way down to 2nd gear before going underneath the bridge, underneath the oval circuit, which is also a part of Twin Ring Motegi. Going through turn 6 here, flat on the throttle, up into 4th gear, and now making his way up into turn 7. The left-right sweeper combination coming down the gearbox to the 3rd gear before bringing the car all the way into the middle of the road and cutting tight now onto the apex of turn number 8. Building up the throttle once again on exit from 2nd gear, he makes his way up to another hairpin style corner, braking early for this one because of how tight this hairpin is compared to the preceding ones, and coming out to turn 9, now it's the dash down to turn 10. Perhaps the slowest corner on the circuit, turn 10, coming up the hairpin which runs onto the start-finish straight for the eastern circuit, which will not be running around, of course. It'll be the case we're running the full Grand Prix circuit, and as he makes his way out the turn 10 hairpin, he now has a brief bit of respite before charging all the way down towards turn number 11. But you can see the pattern continually form. It is the case of long run, hairpin, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 11 here, the right angle downhill braking zone, he makes his way all the way down the gearbox to 2nd gear and immediately gets back on the throttle and going under the bridge here, going underneath the oval circuit surface, going through the left-hand kinker 12 before getting ready to trail brake into 13, the left into right-hander of 14, and as he makes his way through, got to get on the power as early as possible to get across that timeline and get the ultimate lap. Thank you, Matt. Now, as for our rules tonight, our drivers shall be, as always, running fixed setups. That is the rule of thumb for this series. It is a fixed setup series, and our drivers shall be required to run the iRacing medium downforce setup for tonight's races. In the sprint, our drivers shall have 1 fast repair available, and they shall be subject to a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Meanwhile, in the feature race, the grid shall be set by Drivers' Championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round. So that means that our championship standings at the end of round 10 will decide the reverse grid for the feature, and as always, the grid will be separated into driver classes, with the classes starting approximately 1 second apart. That will mean that the pros start ahead of the pro-ams and the pro-ams start ahead of the ams, each class being separated by 1 second as being managed by the head of each driver pack. Our driver's starting fuel load shall be restricted to 70% for the start of the race, and this is to require the mandatory pit stop, while drivers will need to take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. And each driver shall have 1 fast repair available and shall be subject to a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. But that's enough about the rules and regulations. I think we're all done with those. Let's head back to the circuit and see how our drivers are getting on in their preparation for what is the race. As we can see, this practice session only has 1.5 minutes remaining, this final practice session, and we're looking at one of the contenders right now for second place in the Pro-Am Championship, and that is Ben Hicks, the Ignia Motorsport Blaze driver in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, as he sends one of the cones flying there in the run into turn number 3. And as he makes his way on through right now, it will be the case that Ben Hicks and also what will be Jeremy Debova and Jean-Louis Deschamps will all be feeling that pressure. None more so than what is Jean-Louis Deschamps. We can see the Porsche driver parked in the pits there, although it's not very clear for Delta Motorsport. He will be feeling on his mind that he needs to have a good night tonight to keep that championship runner-up position alive come the end of things. Will he be able to? However, that is the big question that we're all waiting to see. As meanwhile, we can see James Slate's making his way around, the RP Motorsports rookies driver here, and we'll just focus on the sub-bar pro-ams at the moment, who really have had perhaps some of the finest racing over the course of the series. Not to say that our pros or our AMs haven't, but it really has been the case that the pro-am class has been incredibly tight through and through, and fantastic racing action throughout. And indeed, as we look away from our pro-am driver to Dean Fairclough, our pro driver, who joined us midway through the season in the Audi ARA, as we can see making his way through the privateer, looking very sharp indeed as he makes his way up into the left-hander here of turn number 7 and sweeping into the right-hander of 8. And we do expect that tonight the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, so the Audis, the Ferraris, and also the McLaren in the form of Håkon Grebstad, who you can see here making his way around the circuit and using the full width of the circuit there into turn 12. And I do wonder if that will be classified as an off-track, although I can't see that coming up on my register as an off-track, using the run-off space down the right-hand side into turn 12. It is the case we're expecting the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars to be the faster cars around here on an individual lap, simply because they've got the weight distribution towards the rear, and therefore they more naturally rotate through the corners, and rotation is so key for a hairpin. You want to get the car pointed out the corner and on the power before you know it. And you can see immediately everybody piling out of the pits. Qualifying time is going to be limited here. It's a long lap, and everybody will want to try and find some space out on the circuit. And as all of our drivers come rip-roaring on out of the pit lane, it is the case. Qualifying is a go. 15 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? What is the complexion of our grid going to be come the end of it? Well, we'll have to wait and see. As we can see the AM driver here of Håkon Grebstad, the Next Gen Racing Orange driver, currently in the battle for the championship win in the AM class, currently in P4. Well, he will be looking for a good result tonight, and we do know that the Jägermeister driver will have it in him to score big. We have seen it throughout the season, and it is the case that really right now the man on the ball is this man here, the AM driver of Matthew Addy, who has come alive in the second half of the season and finds himself in the championship lead. Only by countback, to be fair. If you were to ask him 4 rounds ago, did he see himself in the lead of the championship at this point, I think he might have been 50-50 whether to say yes or not. He's a very competitive driver, as are all of our drivers, and to be fair, a lovely chap, Matthew Addy, but I think now he is noticing just how far he's come over the second half of the season, and it is a joy to see how close it is between him, Stefan Gamble, Rasmussen, Matt Emmons, and Håkon Grebstad. And of course, we do have the return of Matt Emmons tonight. He'll be making his way around the circuit right now in the build-up to this, and we can see the Britishman making his way down towards what is turn number 3 right now. And as he comes on through, it is the case of the driver's got it wrong there. Stephen Fairclough, who's got it wrong at turn number 3, probably ran a little bit wider. Matt Emmons makes the same mistake a little bit later on, loses the rear on power exit out of turn number 4, which is very easy to do around here, getting on the power too soon. And we are expecting the front engine rear wheel drive cars to suffer to a degree in qualifying, such as the BMW M4 and also, well, the other cars that we do have within that classification. Well, it's only the BMWs, because of course we did have the Mercedes as an option, but nobody decided to go for the Mercedes. So it is the case that our BMW drivers are going to be feeling the pinch. But in return, in the race, they should have rear tyres that last a little bit longer, because the rear tyres have less demanded of them, what with the fact the weight is not fully distributed to the rear. But as we look from him to one of our pro drivers in the form of Matt Caruana, our championship leader, who has parked up there on the run into turn 13. He's decided to give himself some space, but he's going to have to be very careful here as he makes his way onto a lap. We're just going to see if he does decide to go onto one, and he does, and we ride on board here with Matt Caruana as he takes us around for what should be an attempt at a pole lap. So making his way down into the hairpin, turn number 1 here, coming down through the gearbox, and you can see Håkon Grebstad there going a little bit deep, and Caruana getting in nice and tight to the apex of turn 2, and he's going to have the draft of Grebstad up the road, just a distant toe here, which will give him roughly 1 to 2 mile an hour more on this straight, as he now makes his way into the braking zone for turns 3 and 4. Coming into the second hairpin here, and you can see once again using that tight entry line and immediately pulling the car onto the apex of turn 4, getting on the throttle full force and violence in order to balance the rear of the car, and now charging it down towards turns 5 and making his way into the braking zone for the third hairpin. You can see it is the case as he comes down. He's starting to close up behind Grebstad here, as we see Billy Fletcher moving out of the way, and now it's the run through the sweeping sequence from 6 through to 9, and as you can see going through the right-hander of 6, fully committed, and now up into 7-8 he comes, breaking his way into that left-hander, bringing the car nicely down. A nice smooth transition as we see there. One of them at Change B machines literally parked off the racing line by inches, and a B fair well done to them for catching the car, and you can see just the fearlessness in Grebstad, and also Caruana as Grebstad gets a little bit deep there. Caruana gets a nice run for the turn 9 apex through that hairpin, and now coming down into the slightest corner on the circuit as he makes his way into turn number 10 here, breaking all the way down through the gearbox, and you can see Grebstad just a bit slow, and that has definitely cost Caruana. You can see there Caruana having to stop the car effectively on apex in order to give Grebstad the opportunity to build up speed. That will cost him a couple of attempts. I do think it will be the case that Caruana will not have had the perfect lap here as he makes his way down into 11, now into the downhill braking zone. Really the only major gradient change at the circuit is that downhill braking zone into turn 11, and then the rise through 11 through to 14, and as he comes through the double left here into 13 he comes. It is the case that Caruana, I think, ruined the fact that he's had a little bit of traffic in front of him that's wanted to be on the lap as he comes across that timing line. What is it going to be from these two drivers? Well, we'll see the screens update very shortly as we see Ben Hicks has also set time, and below we can see Matt Caruana sets provisional pole of 49.432, but I think in his mind he may be feeling that there is a 49.1 if not a 49.0 out there, based on the fact that he did have to make some compromises in that lap. As we look to the chat right now, and we can see Jürgen Nocker there in the YouTube chat saying go team challenge, and will indeed go team challenge, and all of our teams here, but we can see Jürgen Nocker there in the chat cheering on his teammates as we do look to Didi Devalaming, the pro driver, as we see in the rear view picture. I do believe that's Navarro, but Debova getting it a little bit wrong coming out to turn number 4 and putting a wheel on the grass. We can also see there Matt Evans in the Facebook chat, and we're confirming it's not enough track under the bridge. Well, thank you for confirming, Matt. So our drivers are allowed to use the full width of the road. And we say good evening to KT Eames in the Facebook chat. Well, yep, doing fantastically. Thank you, KT. I'm really excited for the racing tonight, and I hope you're doing well. And to all those of you tuning in right now, whether you're a regular viewer, alternatively a first-time viewer as of tonight, hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're all having a good week so far. Of course, it is Wednesday. We also refer to it as Hump Day because we're getting over the midpoint of the week. We've got some fantastic racing action ahead for you all to be excited and look forward to. And indeed, if qualifying is going to say anything, it is going to say one thing and one thing only, is that this is a very difficult circuit in order to get a good qualifying lap and indeed keep it consistent around here. But those who put it right up the front are going to do very well, we reckon, in the race, and at least in the sprint race, where overtaking may be more of a premium compared to in the feature race. Now, to be fair, is overtaking difficult at this circuit? Well, arguably no, because of how long the runs are from the straights into the braking zones, and this corner does invite some rather aggressive overtaking in terms of late lunges under braking. But of course, given how hard this circuit is on the brakes, our drivers will want to nurse their brakes as much as possible, for the simple concern that if they go too heavy on the brakes too soon, they could end up cooking the brakes, as we watch here Edward Lack making his way through turns 7 and 8. Now, the Lamborghini Huracan driver, to be fair, in that absolutely dogged defence and battle with what was Callum Reid-Garton for the win in the feature race at Monza, where he was able to take it literally at the finish line, and it is the case that Edward Lack tonight coming back strong once again here and really having a revival of form and making his way all the way down in towards West turn at number 10 right now. You can see it from a third person perspective here, just how nasty that hairpin is. It looks, when you ride on board, it just looks like another hairpin, but you can just see how it's so symmetrical but also elongated that apex is, and how our drivers have to be hesitant on getting on the throttle through fear of understeering or oversteering and ruin their lap. But as now he makes his way down into turn number 11, he's getting ready to make his way under the bridge, or into the tunnel, we could also say, as he goes underneath the oval circuit, which is completely detached. But a little bit of trivia for you: the pit lane access at this circuit essentially connects the two the two circuits, if you will, so the Grand Prix circuit and also what is the oval circuit. So it is the case that the racing cannot occur at both circuits at the same time due to health and safety reasons, because the pit lane axis runs between the two circuits. And as we can see here, it's the case that Edward Lack improving to a 1 minute 50.476. It is the case he's currently P3 in class, P8 overall. But we look down towards how things are going in our AM class, and it's Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen who's come out the gates early. And well, it does look as though the Switchback Motorsport driver here putting in a very good standard for his qualifying lap. A provisional pole right now of what is a 50.96, and that is the best part of what is a tenth faster than Kurt Van Hoenacker at this time, as we do see here Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen continuing his way around. Now, we did hear in terms of in the practice sessions, I did a little bit of spying with regards to all the data that our drivers were trying to pick up in the practice sessions last night, and a lot of our drivers were saying that with regards to the qualifying lap times, we were expecting low 49s, and in the race trim in particular, on average drivers were expecting to hit 52s in race pace, if not 51s. And well, it'll be the case of course that our Pro-Am class and also our AM class will be distributed in amongst those lap times, most likely for their qualifying times, in terms of coming down to around the 51s or the high 50s we suspect for what is qualifying in the AM class. And we're looking at 50s in the high to low region for the Pro-Ams, and then we're looking at 49s for the Pros. Although I say that, it is the case that Matthew Hodges here making his way out, the CXR Project Black driver, the Ferrari driver who really hasn't had luck go his way when he's been on form. Well, he's on form again tonight, what with the fact he's currently provisional pole in the Ferrari 488 in the Pro-Am class, P5 overall, and it is, well, an absolutely fantastic lap, which is a 1:49.97. He is the only Pro-Am driver right now to be in the 49s, although Jean-Louis Deschamps, who's parked up in the pits, and they're currently putting new tyres on the car, I think he'll have something to say about that, the Delta Motorsport driver who's currently on a 50.12. Now, the good thing for Jean-Louis Deschamps, he makes his way out of the pits here. We've talked so many times about how the Porsche 991 seems to just be really heavily compromised at so many circuits because of its lack of straight line speed. This is the one circuit where the Porsche will excel, and the reason we can say that is because yes, you do have long runs down between each of the hairpins, but when this car gets down to the hairpins, given that the engine is mounted so far towards the rear, and arguably you could classify this car as almost rear engine rear wheel drive, but instead it's classified as mid engine rear wheel drive, much like other cars such as the Lamborghini Huracan Evo and also the Ferrari 488. That means that this car has the ultimate weight distribution for cornering, and particularly through these hairpins, you can imagine that what Jean-Louis Deschamps will try to do, he will try to downshift in the weight and turn the car through the corner, where he gets the whole rear of the car to essentially lift up and rotate him through the corner. But of course, it's going to be taking a lot of skill and dexterity in order to do that. But to be fair, Jean-Louis Deschamps has shown us time and time again that when it is going against him, when the odds are against him, he still gets results out of that Porsche 991, and he is not second in the Pro-Am Championship right now for no reason or by luck. He has literally dragged that Porsche into second in the Pro-Am Championship through his ability, and can he do it again tonight? Can he find a way, now that it's a more comfortable circuit for the car, can he find a way to achieve a huge result? Now, meanwhile, as we look a bit further up the field, we can see Billy Fletcher here making his way on around. He's got Jean-Louis Deschamps tucked in right behind him. Fletcher actually gifting him a bit of a tow and helping the Porsche out where it's compromised on the straight. As Fletcher right now currently P3 overall and in class, in the Pro class, making his way on down on a 1:49.70. And as he makes his way on him, is the case that Billy Fletcher just keeping it together, and we are quite light with regards to pro drivers at the moment. That is an observation. Once again, we've got a lot of Pro-Ams and also a lot of AMs, and as he makes his way on through, we'll just see him to the end of this lap. I think it may be the case that Fletcher's lap has been somewhat a little bit slower than perhaps he anticipated. In fact, he's only improved in the penultimate sector, and Jean-Louis Deschamps has not improved whatsoever as they make their way across the line, and neither driver improving there as they make their way on through. But meanwhile, we do look a bit further down the field, and drivers who yet to set a lap include George Bland, who's making his way around right now, and also Luke McKeown. George Bland, of course, being on the out lap, and Luke McKeown being parked in the pits, and right now up on the jacks. Now, meanwhile, going from them to one of our AM drivers, Navarro Dabova, it is the case that we saw him have a bit of a spin earlier coming out to turn number 4 as he makes his way through 3, and he will shortly be visiting turn number 4, and he won't want to do the same thing as he did last time. And as soon as I say that, he has almost done the exact same thing in a similar fashion. They're just running one tyre wide beyond the exit curve at turn number 3, and it can happen very easily here. What the fact there's not wide runoff areas in terms of tarmac runoff areas, it is the case that our drivers are confronted with much less grippy grass as soon as they put one wheel beyond on those white track limit lines. Now, as we can see in the YouTube chat there, Jürgen Nockert saying can't be there tonight. Go boys, and that is a shame, Jürgen Nockert. We are missing seeing you out on the circuit, but of course all your teammates, or the majority of your teammates, will be out on track, as we do see Kurt van Hoornakker jump back to the pits, and as he does, we look a bit further afield and we can see it's James Holman here, the RD Simsport driver, in the very pretty liveried RD Simsport Ferrari there with the pink, purple into black colouring, making its way through what is their turn number 10. And to answer your question there, Riding Green, and hello to you. I think this is the first time we've seen you in the chat, and we hope you're doing well. Why did all the pro class drivers quit this season? A number of them, unfortunately, have had things come up over the course of the season where they're competing in other series, and due to a clash of dates, they've not been able to continue in this series, and others have retired due to personal reasons, and that has been the predominant case as to why we've seen quite a few of our pro drivers retire. And well, whilst we haven't got as many pro drivers as we used to, the ones that we do still have in this series are competing for what is the top 5 spots. So it is the case that we do still have a major competition on our hands in the pro class, but I do agree with you, it is quite unfortunate to see the pro class drivers withdraw from the series, or at least it would appear that way at this point in time. But as we can see, Holman making his way through turn 1 and 2 right now, and coming well through the first hairpin effectively and making his way down towards 3. It is the case that we can see the pro driver here just building up the pace once again, currently on a 150.87, and as he makes his way into the left hand, looking very smooth at this time as he comes on through. And to be fair, as he comes on through, it is the case, whilst it may look a little bit slow, normally a smooth, slow appearance is the sign of a fast lap, and will that be the case as he makes his way on through? Well, we just have to cut away briefly because Edward Lack is coming on across here, and he's been improving quite sizably in his previous lap as he comes across the timing line. This time, does he improve from his previous best as the timing gun is shot? No, it's the case, he does not improve. A 50.486 is that lap. He does not improve from is at 50.48, which was a little bit lower in that regard. But as he makes his way around right now, we haven't got long left in this qualifying session, and let's show you how the classes are as they currently stand, as we look to Matthew Hodges here, who is continuing to be provisional pole of the Pro-Am class. Just give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and as we can see here, it is the case in the pro class currently. It is Matt Caruana on provisional pole by the best part of only 0.03 of a second ahead of Deegan Fairclough, who in turn is 2.5 tenths ahead of Billy Fletcher, and it's Håkon Grebstad in P4 and Jason Lantry P5. In the pro class, it's Matthew Hodges, who is 1.5 tenths clear of Jean-Louis Deschamps. And then we have Callum Reed-Garton, Ben Hicks and Edward Lack completing the top 5 in qualifying there. And then in the AM class, where it's Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who has retired to the pit lane and will not be coming out for another lap, who is 1/10 of a second ahead of Kurt van Hoornakker, Jochen Seeger, Matthew Addy and Navarro de Bova completing the top 5 in the AM class qualifying. Now, as we bring it back towards the overall screen once again, you can see that in terms of how our drivers line up, we do seem to have all of our pros minus James Holman all the way out towards the front. And Luke McKeown, I believe, well, he has yet to set a lap, so I suspect there may be the case that he's going to be starting from the back of the field for the purposes of this race. Perhaps they haven't been able to get the car out. I haven't heard too much with regards to what exactly is happening there, but perhaps they're having some difficulties with the car. But as he is itching to go race, I'm sure all of our drivers are absolutely itching to go into full race mode. It is the case. This qualifying session, seeing the pros really out qualifying the pro-ams, and then the AMs filtering in at the back. And we are seeing quite a bit of class segregation in this qualifying session. And well, it is the case that sometimes that does happen, whereas in other rounds we have seen it's been the case that we have a lot of AMs intermixing themselves amongst the pro-AMs, as we see Luke McKeown leading it all to last moment and then launching himself into the air, it would seem, going into turn number 1. But yes, at 49.556, he's left it all to that one last lap, and well, in doing so, we can see, and meanwhile, it is the case that Matthew Hodges here making his way through what is turn number, well, excuse me, that would be going into turn number 6 and 7 very shortly, and he is currently on a lap here. He's going to try and secure that provisional pole a little bit more, although his main rival for it, Jean-Louis Deschamps, has decided enough's enough and he's into the pit, so he's not going to be seeing pressure from what is Jean-Louis Deschamps. But what about Callum Reed-Garton here, who has made the switch to Lamborghini Huracan? To be fair, he can technically make the car switch given the fact that he has won the championship, although I'm not sure how the rules are going to be interpreted that one, because well, I believe he should be subject to at least a 40-point deduction for the fact that he has made a car switch out of what is the car switch period. But we'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But I think that is the level of confidence he does have, and the fact that he feels that it's all wrapped up. And we can see here, meanwhile, Jeremy DeBova making his way out of turn number 14 and crossing that timing line very shortly as he comes across that line here. It is the case that Jeremy Jeremy DeBova. Well, in the end, P7 within the Pro-M class. Well, in fact, he promotes himself to P3 in class, up to P9 overall. A good lap there by Jeremy DeBova. Very nicely done there. It's not enough to get him on pole in class, but definitely leaving it to the last moment, and it was worth the wait. And it does look as though in the end it is Matt Caruana who takes the pole position in the Pro class. It will be Matthew Hodges in the Pro-Am class. He finishes lap and improves to 49.870, so the only Pro-Am to hit a 49, and then it is Kurt Van Hoenacker who has taken pole position in the AM class. And in the end, pipping Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen by the best part of what is 700ths of a second. Van Hoenacker putting in a stellar lap, as we see Daniel Holmer here just parked up on what is the start-finish straight here, and he'll be starting P16, that's P8 in the Pro-Am class. But as we are now waiting for things to transition over to what is the sprint race, it's been a very tricky qualifying session. Indeed, we have seen quite a mix-up with regards to our field, but it does seem as though Matt Caruana once again in what is the Pro class demonstrating that overall pace he does have over Billy Fletcher, only by a small margin, not by a huge margin, but he was able to hold on in there. And now we do wait for that flip over to the sprint race. As we can see there, Matt Emmons in the Facebook chat saying that it's the case that Canon Regarton has been notified with regards to the car swap penalty. But right now, as the grid is about to be formed, let's take you through the grid, ladies and gentlemen. So it is the case that for the sprint race, it's Matt Caruana lining up on pole, separated by only 200ths in the end, ahead of Billy Fletcher in P2. Dean Fairclough and Luke McKeown on row number 2, with Håkon Grebstad and Jason Landry on row number 3. Then we have the prime pole driver of Matthew Hodges, who out-qualified Jean-Louis Deschamps by the best part of 2 attempts. They line up on row 4 with Jeremy DeBova and Callum Regarton on row number 5. James Holman, the pro driver there, having a difficult qualifying session, just ahead of Ben Hicks on row number 6, the prime driver. And then we have Edward Lack and Didi Vlaming on row 7, before our pole position man for the AM class, Kurt Van Hoenacker, P15, and alongside him Daniel Holmer, the prime driver from Prix Esports. Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen on what is row number 9, with Hackenshot alongside him, and it's Phil McDougall and Navarro DeBova who complete your top 20. Jochen Seeger and Matthew Addy, the 2 championship rivals in the AM class, line up on row number 11 with Matt Emmons and George Bland behind, and then we have James Slates who'll be starting from the back for this 25 car grid. Whereas we now look to our drivers all lining up, and we move the grid out of the way for you, ladies and gentlemen. It is the case that whilst we do have a bit of a limited field tonight, we are expecting some fantastic racing up and down the field from our 25 drivers. Indeed, a lot of questions to be answered, and well, the big question in particular that does need to be answered, as we see all of our drivers lining up there at distance, is with regards to the AM class. Could we see Kurt Van Hoenacker, our pole position man for the AM class here from Belgium, ready for a spanner in the works for our aspiring AM drivers in that championship? What the fact Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen has managed to qualify P2, and then his rival Matthew Addy is qualified P22, what is effectively P5 in the class, and it is the case that Matt is just behind there, and you can see it just ahead, and really it's Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen's opportunity to try and break away, as we see the manual double file rolling start does get underway here, as all of our drivers pull off of their starting positions, and they will roll under the partial start down towards the start finish line, and as they make their way on through, we can see it's Matt Caruana who will take our drivers away for what is the sprint race at Twin Ring Motegi. Of course, our drivers will be going on the start-finish straight as they make the way on through, and the safety car will peel out the way very shortly indeed as they all come on through past the pit entry here. And now we wait for the Volante Racing Machine, our championship leader in the Pro class, to get us underway. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 as Matt Caruana gets the drop there, and Billy Fletcher and Dean Fairclough immediately pulls to the inside. It's going to be 4 wide as they come roaring down to turn 1 with Caruana putting himself in the middle, and Billy Fletcher finding himself being sandwiched between the 2 Audis around him as they make their way down towards turn number 3. They come roaring on down. I'm hearing that Matthew Hodges has been involved in an incident, but right now we focus on the battle for the lead with Matt Caruana trying to make the breakaway here, and he's got Dean Fairclough going around. Where's the outsider intending to try and do so, but we can see Luke McKeown tucked in behind as they all make the way on through. Meanwhile, a bit further back we can see it's the case that Callum Regarton has managed to get the jump on Ben Hicks as they come through turn number 4 and go down towards turn 5. Meanwhile, looking back up front, Håkon Grebstad now trying to siphon his way around the outside of Billy Fletcher. Fletcher goes defensive on the inside as they make the way into turn number 5, holds the position firmly. A bit further back we can see James Holman here has where's Edward Lack on his inside as we've got a car into the wall, and that's Callum Regarton into the wall underneath the bridge there coming out of turn number 5, but he's off circuit, he should be clear and nobody should be affected other than himself. But as we can see here, James Holman having to defend versus Edward Lack, who's trying to get on through here and put the Pro driver between himself and what is there, Daniel Holman behind. But right now, no success as they make the way on through turn number 8 and up towards 9. They make the way up into the braking zone here, and a bit further back we can see it is the case that we do have a couple of challenge drivers off, and it looks like Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen is still holding on to what is the lead of the AM class. He's got the jump on Kurt van Hoornacker, and he's trying to break away right now with DDD Belaming just behind, and then Kurt van Hoornacker a little bit behind for him. And as they make the way through turn number 10, we can see it's the case that Phil McDougall trying to make his way on through and getting past Kurt van Hoornacker in the long drag race now down towards turn number 11. And it is the case that the Pro driver would love to get on through so he can go hunting after DDD Belaming, who's just up the road. But will he have enough length to do it? No, he has to tuck back in. As meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see Matthew Hodges here, who started off with a very good qualifying lap, has now seen it all go wrong, and now he's got to recover from P19 as he makes his way on through. After one lap, it's Matt Caruana leading by 7/10 of a second as we see Deegan Fairclough defending quite strongly to the inside there into turn number 1 versus Luke McKeown is trying to go round the outside now. The Logitech G Autos Esports driver making his way through turns 1 and 2. Behind Billy Fletcher watches on in P4. Then we have Håkon Grebstad in P5, followed by Ben Hicks, our Pro-Am leader in P6 overall. Jean-Louis Deschamps behind him, and then it's Jeremy Debova in P8 as they make the way down towards turn number 3. As they make the way, and we've got James Holman meanwhile in P9 here, the Pro driver Daniel Holman P10. Then we've got Hackenschott, his teammate in P11 with DDD Belaming coming past Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who now the AM leader here in P13 has Kurt van Hoornacker tight behind him, and then we've got Phil McDougall catching up to the pair of them. Navarro Debova in P16 followed by Matthew Addy as Navarro Debova goes off there at turn number 4. We've got another car in the rear of your picture, that's George Bland, and we see Matthew Addy here spending no time and wasting it. He's looking for a move but he can't quite find it, and meanwhile Matt Edmonds there closes the door on Matthew Hodges. It wasn't close enough to affect his pass up the inside into turn number 5. Matthew Hodges P19, and it's Jason Landry, the Delta Motorsport driver, with a difficult start to his race in P20 as the Pro driver makes his way along and up into turns 7 and 8. But meanwhile, we look back up towards the front here and we can see that Luke McKeown has found his way past Deegan Fairclough. And how did that happen, I hear you ask? Well, here it is, the battle between the two of them. So making their way down towards turn 3, you see Deegan Fairclough defends to the middle of the road, but then it's the case Luke McKeown throws the dummy onto the inside there into turn, and we threw the dummy to the outside and then cut it to the inside at short notice into turn 3, and a sensible move and got it done, and now up a position as a result as our drivers now make the way towards the end of lap number 2 in this 15-minute race as they make the way down towards turn number 11. Now as they come roaring on through this time, we do look a little bit further down the order once again, and we look in particular to Matthew Hodges, who after what was a brilliant qualifying session, it all went horribly wrong at the start. What happened to the CXR Project Black driver? Well, this was the start of the race. Now watch Matthew Hodges here. He's on the left-hand side. You can see the throw on the left-hand side into the corner here. And as he made his way in, there was contact there with Jason Landry and the two drivers getting connected. And that is very unfortunate for Matthew Hodges, who in the end, I think will feel that he had nowhere else to go. And well, that's just the way the corner tapers in. But both drivers lose now. But to be fair to Matthew Hodges, yielding the time up. And you can see that Jason Landry now ahead of him as a result as they make the way through turn number 1 on lap number 3. And as they come through to both drivers soldiering on as they proceed to continue, and as they make their way down towards turn 3, it is the case now Hodges will have everything to do over the course of the rest of this race as we head towards the end of what is the 5th minute as they make their way into turns 3 and 4. As our drivers coming through, we look a little bit further up the road and we can see Navarro Debova here tucked in behind his teammate, which is of course Kurt van Hoornacker, as they make their way up into turn number 5. And now these drivers of course in a bit of a difficult situation here in the fact that they are trying to contest really the best of the rest outside of the top 4 battle in the AM Championship as they make their way through turn number 6. And I think at the moment they're probably running in team formation and not going to worry too much about battling one another for the simple reason there'd be no value in it. They've also got their fellow McChange B driver, albeit in the Pro-Am class of DDD Belaming behind. But meanwhile, more importantly, here is Matt Edmonds, who right now is ahead of Matthew Addy. And now this is critical for Matt Edmonds to get himself back in to the AM Championship hunt. He is in that hunt. He's in P3 at the moment. He's 20 points off of Matthew Addy and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. But Gamborg Rasmussen right now leading the AM class in this race. He's all the way from P12. Matthew Edmonds down in P17. What that effectively means is with him being P4 in class at this point in time, he needs to finish ahead of Matthew Addy as a minimum to give himself that breathing room to be able to start gaining at least one of them and take points away from one of the leaders in the class. And well, if he can hold on right now, this will be a good start. But you can see it in particular down in P21 as they all go into braking. You can see Jason Landry there very close, having to partially defend versus with Matthew Hodges, who runs a little bit wide there, and Hodges trying to get a move on. As you can see, Håkon Grebstad also caught up in the mix, and you can see it in fact running off circuit very briefly as we just look further down the order, and you can see that Håkon Grebstad here getting it all sorts of run, coming from the sequence of corners. So there's contact there with what is, I believe that's James Slates, who has to to back off in the end after trying to go round the outside. I think you can see it just ended up being compromised through turn number 12, and as they make their way on through right now, well, that was very, very close to tears. And you see Callum Regarton also trying to come on through, and you can see as he makes his way out to turn down towards 3 at this point. The Next Gen Racing orange driver, it is not a good day at the office right now as he makes his way down towards 3. As they make their way down through the corner, where we can see it is one of those cases where one of our championship contenders in the AM class really not having a good day, and he's going to have to try and recover this, if not in this race, definitely in the feature, as they make their way on up. But meanwhile, speaking about drivers who are not having a good day, it didn't start off quite the way he perhaps wanted it, Billy Fletcher, but we're riding on board now with the Audi R8 driver as he's chasing after Deegan Fairclough for P3 in this race in the Pro class. And as they make their way into turn number 9, Fairclough gets it a little bit deep under brake, and you can see there he actually had to release the brake pedal slightly in order to unlock the front brakes. And as they make their way down to turn 10, Fletcher's going to look to the inside. I think he's going to fully commit. He's going to send it into the hairpin, and you can see Fairclough has decided to go very deep in order to get the cutback, but Billy Fletcher cognizant of that and parked it on apex to cut away Fairclough's momentum gain, and now it is a drag race between the two identical machines as they make their way down towards turn number 11. Now in this drag race, Fairclough's going to look to the inside. He'll probably try and return the favour if he's close enough. He does! Just about squeeze his nose in there, just about brings the car on in, and Fletcher has to give the space, but now they both swing to left here into turn 12. It's very difficult to go side by side through here without a huge compromise in lap time, and Fairclough backs out in the end and waits for another opportunity. You can see Håkon Grebstad in P5 is now coming into this battle, as we're hearing there has been a huge instant further down involving Edward Lack and Jochen Siegert. Let's take a look at what's happened. Well, here is the prime driver of what is Edward Lack here as he makes his way into turn number 7. Now, under his own power, he goes a bit wide there through 7 and loses the rear car, and Jochen Siegert's going to come right into this. George Bland as well, and James Slates, and really, it is the case that all 4 drivers coming together with Edward Lack making a mistake there, and that is very unfortunate for Jochen Siegert in particular, who is having nothing but bad luck in this race so far, as meanwhile Billy Fletcher, having cleared Deegan Fairclough, is now trying to break away and hunt down Luke McKeown, who's only 2.5 seconds up the road, and hunting down Matt Caruana. But meanwhile, looking all the way back to what is the hunt here for P3 in the Pro-Am class, what I'm hearing there has been a bit of an incident. We've got a driver who's dropping down the order like a stone, and that is Jeremy Debova, who has had an off. He's into the wall there. What has happened to Jeremy Debova? Well, it's the case. Oh, goodness me. And well, now that is, I think Jeremy Debova there may have just got a little bit on the throttle too early. I think he may have reacted to what was there. James Holman having a moment with another driver, and as a result, I think Jeremy Debova, well, he parked it and waited for the opportunity to come back on circuit, but that is quite a rare mistake from the Audi driver from Belgium, as he now gets back up to speed, and all that progress has been severely compromised, and now he's got a lot more to do over the rest of this race, if not in the feature race, to keep himself right in that hunt for P2 in the Pro-Am Championship. But meanwhile, what we haven't seen is the fact that Jean-Louis Deschamps is on a mission to break away from Ben Hicks here, and my goodness, is he doing so right now. The Pro-Am leader in the Porsche 991 as he makes his way down into turn number 11. It is the case, he is the best part of 1.2 seconds clear of Ben Hicks right now. Ben Hicks, of course, would love for the opportunity to hunt him down here. Jean-Louis Deschamps being our second place man in the Pro-Am Championship at this time, looking to finish as runner-up, with Callum Regarton succeeding in taking the championship. And as he makes his way through the right-hander at turn 14, with the fact we're almost coming to the end of the opening 10 minutes of this 15-minute race, Jean-Louis Deschamps doing everything right, although Ben Hicks, who was very fast to be fair in qualifying, not quite on the pace of Jean-Louis Deschamps necessarily, but we can see it's the case that qualifying is one thing, the race is another. As you can see, those carbon ceramic discs on the rear brakes in particular of Jean-Louis Deschamps' car are really, starting to light up. Now, what can that mean in terms of the lighting up of the brake discs as we see them lighting up once again? Well, it can mean that he is putting a bit too much temperature and pressure on those brakes, and in return he will potentially start to experience a little bit of brake fade as he makes his way on through the corners, which sounds nonsensical given the fact that, of course, carbon ceramics, the idea is they prevent brake fade as much as possible. Well, the idea is if he's putting those brakes up to too high a temperature, he may in the end be making himself compromised to a lock-up alternative, just a loss of retardation on the braking, and as a result he could go deep into a corner and get it wrong. But speaking of a driver who doesn't want to get it wrong right now and wants to get it all right and passing Billy Fletcher, Deegan Fairclough, who's right on the back of Billy Fletcher as they make their way up into turn number 9 here, and it is the case he's almost surgically attached to the back of Billy Fletcher's Audi as they come out of turn number 9. And well, these two, of course, only laps ago were in the reverse of one another. It was the case that Billy Fletcher was hunting Fairclough. Now it is the case that Fairclough is hunting Billy Fletcher. But meanwhile, up in the battle for the lead, we can see that Matt Caruana, who's had quite a peaceful run for the opening 10 minutes, now no longer has peace, and it is Luke McKeown who looks the inside here. Matt Caruana Caruana covers him off briefly, but as they make their way down to 11, it's not full defense. And in fact, Luke McKeown is given the space to come from the inside. Caruana looks at the cutback, and as they make their way out the corner, you can see Caruana there tries to cut back. He's all over the back of Luke McKeown as they make their way through turn 13 and into 14. And as they come swinging on through the right hand of right now, it is a situation where I think Matt Caruana knows he cannot afford for McKeown to break away. Caruana was the fastest in qualifying. McKeown only putting in the one lap in the end, and as they make their way down into 1, it is the case that Caruana simply stays behind for now. And I think worried about that potential prospect of Billy Fletcher and Deegan Fairclough getting involved in that battle come the end as they make their way on through. As we're hearing that DD Blaming has jumped to the pits with technical issues with the car after a crash, and we'll take a look back at that here and now. Well, here was DD Blaming only moments ago, and as he was making his way up into turn number 9 here, there was contact there from Jason Landry. I think there was a tiny tap on the rear end, at least that's what the camera would show, and DD Blaming with a spin, and he jumped to the pits, and I think that was his race in curtains. But we look back now to our live pictures, and it's Matt Caruana who's found his way back past Luke McKeown in the run down into turn 5. Now, can Matt Caruana hold on to that lead as they make their way through 6 and up into 7, 8? McKeown's going to look to the inside, but it swings back to a right-hander at 8, and well, this is going to compromise both drivers' lines. The gloves have come off now as they make their way in towards turn number 9, and after this lap we would suspect they'll have one more lap of racing as they come through 9, and Caruana on that outside line, he will have the run to the inside of 10. Both of these cars, of course, powered by the same Audi V10 5.2 litre engine as they make their way down in towards what is turn number 10, and you can see McKeown just sizing himself up very nicely here, looking for cutback moves every time, putting himself on the aggressive posture, and Matt Caruana immediately going defensive, fully to the inside this time, committing to that defense, and McKeown now fully alongside on the outside here. They make their way down, and McKeown squeezing Caruana at first, but then giving the space and using the full width of the circuit and going all the way round, as Matt Caruana on such a tight line here has to back out. He can't fully commit to that defense, and as they now come through 12 and up into 13, you see Caruana backs off this time and will look behind, and there's no wonder why, because Billy Fletcher and Deegan Fairclough have now caught up. They will have 2 more laps, including the one they're about to go on, assuming that the lap time remains around the region of a 1 minute 50 to 1 minute 51. And as they make the way onto the penultimate lap, we can see that's DD Blaming leaving the pit lane. He'll stay clear of our top 5. The pro drivers making the way on through as they make the way through turn number 2. But Matt Caruana all over the back of McKeown, and Fairclough all over the back of Fletcher as they come on down into 3. But no change between these guys, as meanwhile we look a bit further back down the order, and I can tell you that right now Matthew Hodges, in terms of making a recovery drive, he has recovered to P15 overall. That is P6 in the Pro-Am class as he makes his way past Kurt Van Hoenacker, the AM driver there, who of course he's not battling with in the championship. They're in different championships. But as they make the way on down, I apologise, we have to cut back to our leaders because Matt Caruana once again finds his way past McKeown coming into turn 5. We saw this on the previous lap, but they're again side by side through 6. And Caruana here finds himself on the outside to inside line this time. It was the reverse last time as they come through 7. They make their way side by side through. Brilliant action between the two of them, and you can see McKeown gets himself ahead with Caruana, not able to carry the speed, but he does look for it into turn number 9. He goes late on the brakes here, and you see Fletcher being brought into this as Fletcher looks for an opportunistic move up the inside of McKeown, and now this leaves things in a very nasty place as they make the way out towards turn 10, because if one of these drivers gets it wrong, they could be subject to losing all 3 positions, and Caruana holds that inside. He parks it this time on the apex of 10 very heavily, takes away all the momentum of McKeown, and as a result, as Caruana now charges down the eastern circuit start finish straight down towards turn number 11, you can see Billy Fletcher's going to have a shot at this into turn number 11, or does he? No, he does not, and McKeown blocks off the middle of the road there to get the message through to Fletcher. There's no way on through as we ride on board the gearbox here of your race leader as they come through 12 and 13, and as they make the way through the left into right of 13-40, you can see Caruana literally being pressured non-stop there by the Audi R8 and McKeown as they make the way across that timeline and onto one final lap as they will go up towards turn number 1 once again. Now, as they come on down this point, the question for Caruana is, where does he go defensive? Because the problem now is he's really revealed his hand. He's revealed on that last lap how he intends to take away McKeown's approach to get him past. Now he's got to think about where does he defend in order to try and mix things up, because he's had this battle non-stop where you can see going into 3, McKeown tries to throw a dummy up the inside there. He was never close enough to go for it, but he put the car there to try and make Caruana give the space. Caruana wise to it, however, now as they make the way through 4 and down towards 5, you can see Caruana weaving left to right here in order to break the total go subtly, and as they make their way down into turn number 5, it's the case that this time McKeown does not come through, unlike Caruana on the previous lap. So McKeown is waiting. I think where McKeown thinks he can do this is in the flow through turn 6 through to 9. I think that's where he feels he's strong, and he wants to get ahead going into 9, or alternatively in the run from 9 to 10, and he's going to try and take away the speed of Caruana. But as they come on through, making their way through 7 and 8 and heading up towards 9 very shortly, we'll have to wait and see here. It doesn't look as though McKeown's close enough, but we can see a twitch on the car there from Caruana as he gets it wrong under braking. And now as they make the way out to 9, that mistake is going to cost the Briton very dearly, because they make the way down towards turn number 10. McKeown is going to be right there. He looks up the inside. Dean Fairclough looks up the inside of Billy Fletcher, but there's no way through for the pursuers as they make the way out the corner. But now Caruana's in a very tricky situation. He's got McKeown all over his back. He's well within range to go for the offensive down into turn number 11. But will McKeown gamble on it, knowing that Billy Fletcher could capitalise? You can see McKeown looks through it. He goes to the very inside, but it's not enough. There's contact between the two of them, and we can see that Billy Fletcher goes deep as well. And then Dean Fairclough tries to come through, is knocked to the side there by Matt Caruana. And as they come through 13-14, there was a tap on the rear end, but at least on circuit, it is going to be Luke McKeown who takes the win in the sprint race in the Pro class ahead of Matt Caruana as they cross that timeline. And then Dean Fairclough P3, Billy Fletcher P4, Håkon Grebstad P5, and then it is Jean-Louis Deschamps who crosses the line in P6 overall, your winner in the Pro-Am class ahead of Ben Hicks. And then it's Daniel Holm who completes the Pro-Am podium with Håkon shot behind, and then Stefan Gamble Rasmussen makes it a great start to proceedings in the AM class. We will win P10 overall, and then we can see Phil McDougall behind James Holman, Jason Landry and Matthew Hodges, and then Kurt Van Hernacker P15 second place in the AM class, and Navarro Dabova completes the AM podium there, P16 overall, with Matt Evans coming home P4 in the AM class, just ahead of Callum Regarton, and most importantly for him, Matthew Addy, Jeremy Dabova P20 completing our top 20, and then we have James Slates P21, George Bland P22, Edward Lack P23 as he comes on through. Not his day in the sprint, but you never know what could happen in the feature. And there is going to be Jochen Seeger, who in the end we soldiering on still. And it has not been a happy race for the German driver as he makes his way down towards turn number 11 right now. But to be fair, I think it was the case when things did go wrong for him, there was nothing he could do. It was out of his control. And I think it's been a case, it's more of a learning experience with this sprint race. And he'll take all that knowledge, all the data he's got into the feature. Well, he will start ahead of his three peers in that battle for the AM Class Championship. But as he comes across the line right now, it will be P24 for Jochen Seeger completing the race on the lead lap, and Didi Di Vlaming comes home at P25. Well, my goodness, it was quite the race in the end with regards to the sprint, and Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, the AM winner, definitely will be very happy with how things have started. A great start for him, and well, can he make it 2 out of 2 potentially in the feature? And well, the same with Jean-Louis Deschamps in the Pro-Am class, and Luke McKeown in the end. There was a bit of contact between him and Caruana from the looks of things on the camera. We'll have to wait and see how it all goes down in the feature, but there's one thing for certain, it's going to be fast and furious. But before we can get to that, it's time to prepare some post-race winners interviews. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 3 to 4 minutes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for our post-race winners' interviews as part of the sprint race, and we'll be kicking off with our prime winner, Jean-Louis Deschamps, who I think, unless I'm very much mistaken, this is his first win in the series in the Porsche. Let's hear from the prime driver who's competing for P2 in the Prime Championship. Hello, Jean-Louis, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Jean-Louis, it looked as though it was very difficult out there, but in the end you brought the Porsche home for, I think, what is your first win in this season, unless I'm very much mistaken. How does it feel to be on the top step of the Prime podium?
Yeah, finally, it was a long time, so it's my first podium or P1, and I'm happy with that. With the Porsche, it's very tricky on this track, so you have to trail brake in almost every corner to get around it. But I managed it, and I was happy I was in front of Ben Hicks. He's my main competitor, so yeah.
Oh, well, that's brilliant to hear. And taking things back to a degree, we saw in qualifying you didn't quite have the pace to match Matthew Hodges, but still a very good qualifying lap from yourself and right up there with Ben Hicks. Was that everything you could get out the car in qualifying, or was there a little bit more out there? Because it did look as though when we saw you going around, it looked quite dicey, almost as if you were dancing through the corners.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't manage my lap time I did yesterday in a practice session, but yeah, I was happy with it. I was second in class, I think. So, yeah.
And in translating that into the race, we saw at the start there was a little bit of a coming together between Jason Landry and also Matthew Hodges, unless I'm very much mistaken. Where were you in all that at the start? Because it did look as though it got very tight into the opening two corners.
Yeah, I was just behind Jason, my teammate, but I managed to didn't catch them, and Ben Hicks had a very good start, so he went in front of me, and then I outbraked him in the first corner, and then I managed to manage the gap, and I was happy with it. So yeah, it worked well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, of course, looking ahead to the feature race, you'll be starting towards the back of the Prime class. What are your plans for the feature, given we know how the Porsche is not strong on the straights, but seems to be very strong through the corners, and this circuit is all about the corners? Can we expect you to go all in the feature, or are we going to be seeing something a bit more conservative?
To be honest, I have no idea because it's the first time I drive this track, and it's the longest stint on a set of tires. So I don't know how I will manage the tires, but I will see how it's go and just go for it.
Oh, well, we look forward to seeing how you get on, Jean-Louis, indeed, making that Porsche dance. But until then, congratulations once again on your inaugural win in the series, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you.
So hearing there from Jean-Louis Deschamps, who seems quite exhausted, but at the same time, I think now very focused on what he can potentially achieve in the feature race. And as he was saying there with regards to the fact that in the Porsche, it's so much about trail braking, and we could see his brake discs really lighting up time and time again under braking in the qualifying session, and also in the race, to be fair. And I think that's the one thing that Jean-Louis is now going to have to really balance within the feature, is how the brakes warm up over the course of the feature race, over those 60 minutes. But we go from our winner in the Prime class to our winner in the AM class, and that is Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. Let's bring him in. Hello, Stefan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello, Paul.
Stefan, it looked tough out there, but not for you. It seemed to be quite the cruise to victory. How does it feel to have come home first at Twinmer and Motegi in the sprint race?
Yeah, actually, I haven't seen that coming. I think I said to you when I won the last race, feature is that I really thought that this was a difficult track. I haven't been here before. So I haven't seen that coming, actually. I was quite surprised. I think I managed the start very well. I came across all the accidents without being hit. And I had one thing in mind, and that was just to be in front of Matthew Addy. That was the only thing I thought about. And it came out that I went to be. And then actually after the first lap or so, 2 laps, I think I got a gap or find my place on the track between Håkon Grebstad and Philip Medugel. And Phil was kind of nice to either stay behind or we just had kind of the same pace, all of us. So I think that then I tried to cruise at home, actually.
Well, it did look as though it was very well managed by yourself, and I can see in the YouTube chat your colleague Alexander Batak right now saying P1 baby, let's go Stefan. So definitely,
Yeah.
I think Switchback Motorsport very happy with the performance. I do have to ask though, in qualifying, how did it feel in the car in qualifying? Because we saw good laps from yourself, and in the end, where it put you right up the front in the AM class. Was that everything, or do you feel as though you're still learning more about the circuit with each and every lap?
No, actually, I was going into this saying that if I could do 50.9, I think 1 minute 50.9, that I would be happy with that in the qualifier. Then I did I think the 2 laps where the tires are still good, and then I went into pit and changed the tires just to see if I could get some more. And I was actually, I think, 0.2 of my delta, and then I made a mistake, and then I just bent it, and I couldn't reach to go back and do 2 more rounds. So there were more to get, and I can see that I got the fastest lap here at 150.8. So there's still something to get there, I think.
Oh, indeed. And then looking ahead now to the feature race, of course, very valuable points on the line. You'll be starting at the back of your class alongside Matthew Addy. What's the plan for the feature? Is it just do whatever it takes to beat Addy?
Yeah, actually, actually it is. Try just to stay close to. I think I've made a gap, kind of a gap right now, and then it's just to try to stay close somehow.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature. But until then, congratulations on the win in the sprint, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing there from Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who very happy with his performance. And I think one of the telling things, and we heard it from Jean-Louis Deschamps as well, but more so from Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen there, where he was saying about the fact that he's come to this circuit with very limited knowledge or no real track time, and having to build up that track time and setting himself that target of the 50.9. If he could hit that, he'd be very pleased in qualifying. And I think that's the key thing for a lot of drivers here. They've come into this one. It's not a circuit that you normally see GT3 class racing at within iRacing, nor in the real world. It is the case you normally see things such as Super GT around here, even at motorbikes, but it is the case that this circuit is a very different circuit, and a lot of drivers coming in here with a bit of an unknown and just trying to unleash the pace as they go and adding knowledge. But again, Rasmussen put in a very clear point there, which is he wanted to finish ahead of Matthew Addy, and that target was achieved comfortably. And I think it'll be interesting to see now how he manages that start in particular, where the two will be lined up alongside one another, very close to one another on that feature grid. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be taking a brief break. We'll be back at approximately what will be 3 minutes to 9 for the build-up to the feature race. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and just building up now to the second race of tonight's proceedings at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan. Round number 11 of this 12-round series, of course, and we just had a word from our sponsor, Apex Racing Academy, our primary sponsor for Lobby 1 in this series. Indeed, if you're looking to improve your way of driving on iRacing, or alternatively looking to gain time or better set up the car, it is the place to go to Apex Racing Academy or apexracingac.com for further information. But talking about information, it is the case that our drivers will have gained a lot of information from the racing they've just conducted in what was the sprint, and particularly with regards to the fact that they will have seen where the overtakes are possible. They will see where their car is overheating with regards to potential braking. And one driver in particular who I heard from briefly in between the races, just caught him as he was getting into the BMW M4, is Matt Emmons, the Lux M24 of MV Esports driver, and it is the case racing in the next-gen racing livery there as he makes his way down towards what is turn number 3. And what he was saying to me, the Briton, is that going into this race, he felt as though he wasn't aggressive with regards to his overtakes in the sprint race, and as a result that cost him potential opportunities, and he needs to remind himself he does have a chance at the title, given the fact that whilst he is a little bit out of it in terms of being 20 points down on the two championship leaders going into this round, he does have a shot at the title. It's not an outside shot, it's a very valid chance, and he just needs to get those big points up on the board. Well, he's going to need to see if he can turn things around in the feature, and he will be placed a little bit further up the order compared to two of his rivals, that is Matthew Addy and also what is Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, but he will have Håkon Sig at one place ahead of him, and we'll have to wait to see how all four of them navigate the full hour of racing. Of course, our drivers make the way on through and around right now. It is the case many a driver will be feeling that pressure and will be thinking what can they do in order to get a great result. Now, I should clarify, ladies and gentlemen, we are having a slight technical issue with Billy Fletcher's livery. For some reason, it has decided to load itself as an Altitude Esports livery, most likely named after what is Mark Fletcher. And as a result, we are going to try and give that one more quick technical fix, which we will do on live screen here. But I get the feeling the issue is not going to go away, even though we have tried changing it. So I do apologise, we're not going to be seeing Billy Fletcher in his proper racing colours for the purposes of this feature race, which is a bit of an inconvenience. We have tried fixing it in between the two races, and well, we will be seeing Fletcher making his way on around very shortly indeed as he makes his way down towards turn number 3. But as he comes on through, in the meantime, we can see Håkon Grebstad just tucked in behind, coming through turn number 3 and into 4. And of course, sometimes with liveries, we do get these little technical glitches which see our drivers' liveries not load properly. And today, we've just been hit by a small bug, but we will make sure that's not there for the purposes of going into the final round. Small technical blips, but hey ho, let's go all the same. And that's exactly what our drivers will be saying as they make the way around this circuit right now. They'll be itching with the practice session complete. It is the case now. We are waiting for the transition over to the grid, and we'll have to wait and see how it is all going to go down over the course of the 60 minutes. My personal prediction is I think we may see quite a few unexpected moments in this one. I do not think it's going to be clean sailing, and I think we could be seeing quite a few incidents on the opening couple laps with drivers trying to force their way up the order whilst everyone's trying to get themselves up to temperature. But let's take you through that grid. So it is the case, for the purposes of what is race number 2 of the feature race, we'll have James Holman starting on pole, the lowest placed driver in the Pro Championship going into this round and attending with Dean Fairclough alongside him. Jason Andrew and Håkon Grebstad on row number 2 with Billy Fletcher in P5 there. It seems we are missing both Luke McKeown and Matt Caruana, so as a result we will not be seeing them take to the grid. We then got James States in P6, who is going to be starting off our Pro-Am class, and behind him Phil McDougall and Håkon Grebstad on what is row number 4. Diddy Blaming and Matthew Hodges, row number 5, with Ed Black and Daniel Homer on row number 6. And then behind Jeremy DeBova and Ben Hicks on row 7, with Jean-Louis Deschamps and Callum Reed-Garton on row number 8. Kurt Van Hoenacker starts off our AM class with Navarro DeBova alongside him, George Ban and Jochen Seeger on what is our 10th row, with Matt Emmons and Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen on row number 11, and Matthew Eddy completing our lineup for the grid. But we are missing a good number of names here, and particularly 2 big names in the Pro class, and that is one Matt Caruana and also one Luke McKeown, as all our drivers now start to pull away and get ready to go racing. With this manual double fold rolling start, it is the partial formation lap starting in the run down towards turn number 11. But as we look towards the front right now, we can see James Holman. He'll be getting our drivers underway soon from the safety car when it pulls away, going past turn at number 12 and into 13, and then we will be going racing for the full round. We'll have to wait to see how that strategy plays out. I suspect that pit stop will be very important in terms of trying to undercut the field. As we can see now, James Holman bringing the Pro Pack up through turn number 13, and he will be taking us to the green. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 2. As you can see, Deegan Fairclough immediately going on the offensive and get the slight jump on James Holman as they make the way down towards turn number 1. And as they make the way into the right hand, here is the case at Holman, where he's going to try to hold the inside, but he can't quite hold on to it as such in order to be able to gain an advantage. And as a result, as they make the way down towards turn number 3, it's the case that Holman is going to be feeling that pressure under braking into the corner, and Fairclough will be going alongside here as we see some cones going flying. I think that's Jason Landry taking some cones for a visit. And as they make the way on through, it is the case that, oh goodness me, and Håkon Grebstad losing the rear end and taking Jason Landry with him, and the Pro-Am drivers now making the way on through, but it's almost as if the seas have split, and you can see the 2 Pro drivers there staying out of the way, as meanwhile Jeremy DeBova up into the lead of the Pro-Am class here, with Phil McDougall making a move on Jean-Louis Deschamps here, and it does seem we've had some sort of incident occur within what is the Pro-Am class, because a lot of our Pro-Ams have dropped massively down the order as they make the way on through turn number 6 and up into 7, and you see Phil McDougall here gaining massively, and Jean-Louis Deschamps and Jeremy DeBova, they've all gained tremendously from all this, and Daniel Holmer right now also following through, as meanwhile in the lead of the AM class is Navarro DeBova as they make the way on through and heading up towards turn number 9. But we are going to need to take a look back. We've already had 2 drivers into the pits. We've also got 1 driver out of the proceedings. That's Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen, who has retired already, so we've lost our winner in race number 1. As meanwhile a bit further back in your picture there, we can see it's Edward Lack here battling side by side with what is Callum Reed-Garton as he tries to go all the way round, but it's not going to be easy, and you can see trying to make his way on through with a car that's had the front bumper completely ripped off. That's Håkon Grebstad. I think there's been some sort of huge incident into turn 1, because we have had a lot of drivers with damaged cars and we just haven't seen it on camera because we're focusing on the pros going through the opening corner. And indeed it is the case that right now I think there's been a huge upset, but you can see there Håkon Grebstad trying to get from the inside to outside as they go underneath under the bridge, and as they make the way through you can see Callum Reed-Garton into the pit, and Edward Lack keeps the position. So after 1 lap, it's Deegan Fairclough leading ahead of James Holman in P2, and Billy Fletcher P3. Then we have Jeremy DeBova in P4, the leader of the Pro-Am class, chasing after the pros, with Phil McDougall behind and Jean-Louis Deschamps in P6. We then have Daniel Holmer in P7, and then we have the leader of the AM class in P8. That's Navarro DeBova breaking away and staying and having to stay with him, Kurt Van Hoenacker, as they make the way out towards turn number 3. Then it's Jochen Seeger in P3 of the AMs, and then we've got James States in P11, the Pro-Am driver, with Matt Emmons just behind, the AM driver in P12, P4 in class. Matthew Eddy giving pursuit here as Matthew Addy almost loses it and gets a tank slapper coming out of turn number 4, and oh goodness me, Matthew Addy will be kicking himself for that one, because it was looking very good as he tries to bring himself back up to speed now, and all that progress has been in vain, as now it is the case that Edward Lack is promoted. Indeed, a number of drivers are promoted, and Matthew Addy drops all the way down. Meanwhile, it is Håkon Grebstad P14 after that spin earlier on, coming out to turn number 4 in the opening lap. Håkon Grebstad P15, George Bland P16, Jason Landry P17, then we've got Ben Hicks, Matthew Addy and Callum Reed-Garton completing your top 20, with Didi Devalaming and also Matthew Hodges in the pit, although I believe they're still being serviced at the moment, and Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen has retired from this race, as I'm to understand. But what happened on that opening lap is the big question. Let's take a look back. Well, it looked as though something huge happened before the racing even got underway, because that is Matthew Hodges into the wall. Now, what on earth happened here? This was the start of the race, and well, Deardy Deblayment got, well, it looks as though Deardy Deblayment got turned at the very start of the race. Can we see anything else looking a bit further back? That's the question. Okay, so here was the start of the race, and we jumped to the blimp camera, and two cars came together. So that was for Laming and Hodges coming together straight away, and Callum Regarton going very slowly at the start. Now, as they all came up into turn one, okay, so there was a car knocked off there, and we had one of the Bright Esports machines. That's Håkon Shot going for a spin. It's a very distant camera here, and that's Callum Regarton being connected. And, well, that explains, I think, what has happened. Obviously, we can't analyse it too much more, otherwise we'll be missing the live action. But it would seem as though multiple drivers have come together at the start of the race, and we can see that in the YouTube chat. And, well, we've just realised that on my own screen. Stefan Gamble Rasmussen saying to us in the YouTube chat, by mistake, I joined the server in the BMW instead of the Ferrari, and you can't change anymore. So as a result, it is the case that Gamble Rasmussen has essentially put himself out of the race by joining with the wrong car, which is very, very unfortunate, because we're looking forward to seeing you battle for the win, Rasmussen. But it is the case at the same time, well, we'll be looking forward to seeing you come back in the final round, because of course the championship will be on the line. But I do feel for you very much so, and I can understand your frustration. But meanwhile, one driver who will be trying to come on through, as we see there, Kirsty M. Shepherd in the YouTube chat, and also Katie Eames in the Facebook chat asking where are Matt Caruana and Luke McKeown. Well, I haven't heard anything as to why they're not here. I would presume they've just not got out onto circuit in time, which is a huge shame, of course, because it means that we are running with quite an even more depleted Pro Pack, and it means that the contest for the lead right now in the Pro Pack is between three drivers, and that is Dean Fairclough, James Holman, and also Billy Fletcher, who goes to move James Holman into 11 and gets it done there. Very smooth overtake, but we are missing a number of drivers, and well, our drivers are having to soldier on. 5 minutes in, 55 minutes to go. But meanwhile, it is the case that whilst our pros may be a bit sparse, we can see in the Pro-Am class, it is the case they are not sparse in the fact that we've got Jeremy DeBover here, who's leading at the moment, but he has got Phil McDougall and Jean-Louis Deschamps both over the back of him as they make the way onto another lap as they come down towards turn number one on lap number 4, and as they make the way into the braking zone, we can see it is the case that Jeremy DeBover here just trying to hold off Phil McDougall at the moment, but the BMW driver here really capitalising earlier on, and it does seem as though as they make the way down towards turn number 3, well, Jeremy DeBover here just under some huge pressure as they make the way through the corner, but no signs of him having an issue. And as he makes his way through the left-hander here, it's a case where he's going to keep on pressing on as they make the way down towards turn number 5. Now we look back to the exterior cameras, and what we can see with these three running together. Meanwhile, a bit further back, you've got Kurt Van Hoenacker here, as pointed out to us by Gaz Wheel in the Facebook chat. Great start for Matt Emmons indeed. Matt Emmons staying clear of all the carnage, well, for the most part, though I think there was a little bit of a scratch on the front bumper of that BMW. I might be mistaken, but it does look as though Matt Emmons right now giving that pursuit for the AM lead. As they make the way under the bridge here and head into turn at number 6. He is falling back a little bit. I think Matt Emmons may be nursing some damage to the car, and also letting Håkon Grebstad come through, the pro driver here. Remembering he doesn't have to battle with drivers of other class if he chooses to. That's at his own volition. He doesn't gain anything for it other than the satisfaction of battling with another class of driver. But as they make the way on up right now, we can see a bit further back. Edward Latt, they're going a bit deep into turn number 9, and as they come on through, where you can see the faceless Håkon Shotmobile in the form of that BMW from Bright Esports, the Swedes car there, missing its entire front bumper. Well, as they make the way through turn number 10, you've got George Bland behind with Jason Landry trying to carve his way up the inside, and it is the case the Delta Motorsport driver getting on through, but it does look as though the top 3 in the Pro-Am class and the top 3 in the AM class are all very tight together right now, and here's our leader in the AM class, Kurt Van Hoenacker, and behind him there is Navarro de Boba, his teammate from the Challenge BE2, who's acting like a little bit of a rear guard right now, it has to be said, in terms of their relative pace by comparison, because Jochen Siegert in P3 here is inching ever closer, lap on lap, and Matt Emmons losing a bit of pace with regards to, I think, some damage on the car, and also dealing with the pros and the Pro-Ams trying to cut their way past him. It does mean that Matt Emmons right now is feeling that pinch in terms of what is that overall of race pace, but we'll wait and see. Of course, he may be putting some sort of strategy here and deciding to conserve the car, knowing that his fellow AM contemporaries are not too far up the road as they make the way down towards turn number 3 on lap number 5 here. And as they come on down this time, will we see any potential moves? Well, we can see Edward Latt there looking for it, but not going all the way into turn 3 and deciding to hold in the meantime as they make the way on through. And we can see Peter Kubi is there in the YouTube chat saying go on Change and RP Motorsport, and indeed both teams representing tonight, and James Slate's having a difficult start to his race unfortunately, and here he is in P19, P8 in the Pro class. What happens to James Slate on lap number 3? Well, this was as he was coming out of turn number 11, now into 12, and I get the feeling he's probably just run a little bit wide here and onto the grass, onto braking into 13. He's gone very heavy on the brakes. Oh my goodness, is the case. Evans there having to react to James Slates, who, to be fair, was a passenger in his own car once the rear went, but he brought it back up to speed, and Slates with a little bit of flat spotting on the tyres, now back up to speed and will pursuing his prime peers. The first target up the road from him, of course, is Ben Hicks, who we can see here, the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver, as they make the way through turn 9 up towards turn number 10. Now, I will be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, the field is very spread out for what we would have expected at the start of this race, and I do believe that is due to the number of incidents we saw right at the start, where it does seem as though a couple of drivers came together, and we're not exactly sure what the story is behind that. We won't get that story until the stewarding after the race, but we can see Håkon Grebstad here, who fell all the way down the order after his spin coming out of turn number 4, and Jason Landry pretty much also having a similar spin, albeit both drivers going opposite ways and parting the seas for the Prams and the Ams to come through. Here's the case now that the Norwegian is on a crusade to try and find his way back up to the top 3, but he has got a long way to go in order to try and get after James Holman, Billy Fletcher and Dean Fairclough, who are a fair distance up the road right now as they make the way onto another lap here. And as they come through into turns 1 and 2 this time, you can see that Matt Evans staying behind, and also you can see it now, to be fair to Matt Evans, in terms of lap pace right now, his previous lap was a 51.7, meanwhile you can see at a 52.36, and we can also see it Navarro, DeBoer and Kurt Van Hoenack of 51.9 and 51.6. So Matt Evans is in there in terms of pace. He's not off of the pace of the drivers ahead, as meanwhile a bit further down the order we've got Matthew Addy here, who seems to have had a major moment, and that car is needing to be turned around the right way. What has happened to Matthew Addy? Well, he's all by himself at this point, coming down into turn number 1. I suspect he's probably overcooked it on the rear on turn in, and he's gone a little bit deep. In fact, he's understeered through turn 1 with too much speed in the car, and as a result, the car has just simply gone him as he's gone onto the grass and tried to turn it back on for turn 2. And, well, that is a very unfortunate mistake for Matthew Addy, and it has not been Matthew Addy's day, it must be said. And, well, in Matthew Addy's mind right now, I think that will be a very annoying prospect, to the fact that he's had so much momentum after the last few rounds, and now that momentum seems to have come to a dead stop in what is the form of the Japanese circuit in Motegi. As meanwhile we look back up to our battle for the lead in the Prime class, and we can see that Jeremy DeBoer here, well, he is a sizable portion of time ahead of Phil McDougall as they make their way down into turn number 11. But now the big question, of course, here is the fact who is doing what in terms of managing the car. We saw Phil McDougall, currently P5 overall, P2 in the Prime class. We saw him close up very rapidly on the back of Jeremy DeBoer earlier on, but now he seems to have either hit a wall in terms of the dirty air coming off of the back of Jeremy DeBoer's car, and as a result can't gain anymore, or he's now decided just to tuck in and run to the pace, because in terms of relative pace on that last lap, Jeremy DeBoer a 50.8, Phil McDougall at 50.6, but Jean-Louis Deschamps meanwhile at 50.5 as we ride on board here with the Porsche 991 driver. Now remember, we spoke to in the post-race interview, he was our winner in the Pro class in the sprint, and he was saying about the fact after what was a good start where he was able to stay out of trouble. And speaking of trouble, I'm sorry to cut across myself, did he lane and then get it very wrong, a lap down, but he was off the circuit and he's returned to the pits. I think it's not been the change speed driver's night, but what I was about to say with Jean-Louis Deschamps here, he was saying to us, of course, in what was the post-race interview with regards to the fact that he just felt as though this car, he's got to do a lot of trail braking, and as a result he's got to make the car dance through the corners. I think for Deschamps, if he can stay this close to the two drivers in front of him, or stay within a second of them, he will manage the car as much as he can. He won't push it until the final laps of his opening stint, and then towards what is the end of the race. Because right now he has to be very concerned about brake temperatures, in particular the Porsche, whilst it's a very good handling car here, and we have seen just how strong it is as we continue to follow him here through up into turn number 10. At the same time, those brake temperatures are going to be hot, and when they get overly hot, it does mean that he will lose that retardation force, particularly in the front brakes, and then he could have the risk of understeer going into the corners. But right now he's just staying there and chasing down Phil McDougall and Jeremy DeBoer, and of course he will get a distance slipstream off the two drivers here. He'll feel that and gain him about 1 to 3 mile an hour depending on the length of each straight, and he can use that for a little bit of fuel saving potentially, and it may just give him some comfort as he makes his way through 11 and up into 12, 13 and 14 as they flow through the double left into right combination here. And you can see Deschamps right now just managing the car through each and every corner as he makes his way to the end of what is his 7th tour and heading on to lap number 8. As we look back to the exterior cameras right now, we can see it is the case that our top 3 in the Pro-Am class all run together. And Daniel Holman, to be fair, the Swede here, not too far off. Daniel Holman that last lap at 51.0. Meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps at 51.2. Phil McDougall at 50.7. Jeremy DeBova a 50.8. And I think it is the case of these drivers at the moment. Daniel Holman just a little bit off the pace compared to the 3 in front of him. But he is there. He's ever present. And that, for Daniel Holman, is a sign of something he can use to his advantage. He could potentially, for example, look to undercut approximately the 22 to 25 minute mark and then just go all in for a couple of laps and see if he can give himself track position and then try to hold off in the lead of the Pro-Am class to the very end. It is a potential strategy. We'll have to wait and see what he decides to employ. But we look from him, meanwhile, to the leader of the AM class here, Kurt van Hoenacker, who has just been passed by the pro driver there, Håkon Grebstad, who goes very deep under braking into turn number 5. And as they now make the way through 6 here, it does look as though Van Hoenacker looking very comfortable in this race at the moment. The McChange driver here, he does have his teammate Navarro de Bova behind. The two of them are working this very nicely together, and they are inching away from their pursuers in the form of Jochen Seeger and also Matt Emmons, the two BMW M4 drivers, as they make their way through the picture there, through turn number 8 and up into 9. And as they come up into the left-hand hairpin here, it is the case that the German driver having a much better run of fortune compared to the sprint race, where it all went horribly wrong time and time again, but he brought the car home all the same, in it to win it, as they say, and in it to finish it whenever you need to. And as he makes his way down through turn number 10, you can see how right now you can see, I think, just focusing on the fundamentals, which is get his brake zones lined up, get that cornering in, get on the throttle at the right time. He does not want to see this race fall away, because if it does, he effectively will be ruling himself out of contention for the AM Championship, we believe, given his difficult performance in the sprint. Meanwhile, Matt Evans here giving the space to Hackenshaw, the Pro-Am driver, who's trying to come through on the inside to outside as they go through the double left now, 12-13, and into the right of 14. But you can see here Hackenshaw very close to the back of Matt Evans and just avoiding a little bit of contact there as they make the way on down and onto another lap. And I think Matt Evans has to think about now whether he releases the Swede or whether he decides to continue to be ahead, because if that contact continues, well, if that close proximity continues, there is of course always the risk of a little bit of contact, and well, he will not want that contact given the fact that his championship is on the line. Not to say Hackenshaw will cause contact, I should point out now. It is just the case, of course, sometimes when you're running that close, particularly into heavy trail braking zones such as 13 through to 14, it can happen. But Ben Hicks, meanwhile, making his way past George Bland there, we saw into turn 1, the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver, the Pro-Am driver, going past the AM driver, and well, we can see it's the intermix of drivers at this point in time, and it is a little bit quiet on the overtaking or battle in front. I think everybody right now just settling into a rhythm. That can happen at Motegi. It can be the case that our drivers just get into that rhythm, but it's the pit stop window in particular where we'll be looking to see how things open up in terms of the strategies and the battling between drivers. But I say that Phil McDougall is inching ever closer to the Pro-Am leader right now, and that is Jeremy DeBova at the head of your camera shot here with Phil McDougall tucked in behind. And as they make the way through turn number 10, I think what Phil McDougall may be doing at this point, I think he may be trying to figure out how he wants to run his strategy here. Now, of course, going into this race, some drivers will have already prepared scenario-based strategies. So scenario A, if you're at the head of the pack, scenario B, if you're in the midfield, etc. Or it's the case you have a good start to the race or a bad start to the race. I think Phil McDougall, we saw earlier, was putting a lot of pressure on Jeremy DeBova, and then he backed it off for some time, and now he's building that pressure back up. I wonder whether the Britain feels he can make the move for the lead of what is the class before they go into the pits. Because you can see how he is closed up on that last lap as they come across our timing line this time. It is the case. That last lap from Phil McDougall at 51.3, Jeremy DeBova at 51.4, Jean-Louis Deschamps at 50.7. Phil McDougall got very close and as a result had to back off. And now Jean-Louis Deschamps, who we can see here, sweeping out onto the racing line nice and early to signal his intent. Or is it a dummy potentially? No, he signals his intent, which is he's going to put the car on the racing line there and not try and go for overtake. But look at those rear brake discs. They are lighting up very much so, and we are only 17 minutes in right now, and as all three drivers come down into turn number 5, let's just look at the side on profile here if we get a good picture of it to see who's got the carbon stripes lighting up. And you can see it's the case, and not for the lead two, it's Jean-Louis Deschamps in particular who has got blazing hot rear brakes, and that is a sign right now that whilst he may have a lot of pace at this point in time, later in the race he may be feeling the pinch of those brake temperatures as he comes up through turn number 7 and 8. And as they make the way on through, Jeremy DeBova of course is in the nice position. He is quote-unquote in the pressure position or the hot seat in the fact that he is the leader, but at the same time, he really determines the pace of this group unless Phil McDougall really wants to go for a move. But it does look as though every time McDougall gets close, Jeremy De Boer just turns on the on switch and ups the pace a small amount here, because you can see as they come into turn number 10 how Jeremy De Boer is able to open up the gap, and the first sign of a little mistake there from Phil McDougall. A little bit of understeer through the apex to turn 10, and that has cost him a bit of time. It's cost him 2 tenths on exit of 10 down towards 11, and as they make the way roaring down now into the braking zone for 11, that downhill braking zone, you can see how Jean-Louis Deschamps very close behind and continues to stay with them. But speaking of change, it is the case that Navarro de Bova, after being passed by Jason Landry and Edward Lack, the Pro and the Pro driver respectively, them coming through to cut their way up the field, Navarro de Bova has now got Håkon Grebstad, his rival for P2 in the AM class in this race. They are nose to tail together as they come on through, but I'm sorry to cut away from this, ladies and gentlemen, because Jean-Louis Deschamps is getting ever closer to the back of Phil McDougall as they come up through what is turn number 1 and 2. And I thought there was the prospect there of a potential look for a move from the Delta Motorsport driver, who is really now starting to build that momentum, but he's not gone for it, and instead he waits. So we do cut back to the battle for P2 in the AM class here, and as you can see at P13, who you're looking at, he's the focus of the camera with Navarro de Boa just ahead, and as they make their way up towards what is turn number 3 right now, I think what the situation is for Håkon Grebstad, I think he will feel that he's got a little bit more pace than Navarro de Boa lap on lap, but he doesn't want to risk overcooking the car, particularly with regards to tyre wear. Now the thing about the front engine rear wheel drive BMW M4 is it won't have the natural rotation of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, which all the other cars which are featured here in terms of manufacturers do have. So as a result, what will go through the mind of the German driver here is he wants to try and protect the tyres, because we have typically seen in these 1 hour races drivers do not change the tyres because of how much time it costs in the pit, and instead they opt to simply run the same set of tyres. And I think you can see it will want to protect the tyres for that second stint, because come the end of the race, particularly the final 10 minutes, we suspect particularly the Audi and also the Porsche to an extent, those two cars will really put a lot of pressure through their rear tyres, and they will have scrubbed off a lot of the available compound in order to get the grip. And the Audi is so sensitive to tyre wear compared to its contemporaries, and that is the big thing that you can see what I have to have in mind. But of course, if he spends the race like this and Kurt Van Hoornacker is able to break away, then you can see he has essentially resigned himself to a potential battle for P2, assuming nothing unexpected happens with Kurt Van Hoornacker, who is currently leading the AM class. Where is Matt Emmons in all this? Well, he's still making his way on through right now. I think Matt Emmons is starting to feel a little bit of pinch of pace. I think there is some damage on that BMW M4 for the simple reason his lap pace at the moment is 52s, low 52s, whereas his rivals in the top 3 are running in the high 51s. And as they make the way on through right now, we're hearing that Edward Lack has had an off, and that's Ed Lack off circuit there at turn 13-14, and he's waiting for the field to come through as Håkon Grebstad into the pit. What has happened here to Edward Lack? So making his way on through, he's just simply caught the car under braking, and Jason Landry there having to make sure to back the car off in order to not make contact with the CXR Project Black driver, and that is very unfortunate for Edward Lack, who's now got back up to speed, but he's dropped all the way down to P16 as Håkon Grebstad into the pits early here, and Ben Hicks as well. They've decided to come in right at the start of the pit window. Now I should clarify, there is no defined pit window in this race. It is the case that our drivers only have to make a mandatory stop. They could technically do it right at the start of the race, i.e. after 5 minutes the pit lane would open, but the window in which we normally see pit stops is anywhere between the 20th minute and what is the 50th minute. The 50th minute in race is where a lot of fuel saving is possible, normally where there's a lot of straights, whereas normally we see our undercutters go within the first 5 minutes, so between the 20th minute and the 25th minute, and we see our overcutters go 35 minutes and onwards. And we are seeing here that Jean-Louis Deschamps, well, he's not really worrying about overcutting or undercutting right now, because he wants to simply overtake the driver in front of him, and that is Phil McDougall as he goes to the cutback there, coming out to turn number 10. But I do wonder with Matthew Hodges, oh, not Matthew Hodges, my apologies, Ben Hicks coming in that early, whether he is trying to go for a huge undercut on the field right now, as we have moved in to what is the 23rd minute of this race as they come on through. Now as our drivers make their way down and around once again, we'll have to wait to see whether anybody peels in early here, particularly in these close battles between drivers, as we see Phil McDougall has come in, and well, my goodness, Phil McDougall has gone for the huge undercut here. He's come in with 22 minutes of the race complete, and now Jean-Louis Deschamps and Jeremy De Boer, we will have to see how they react to this. Will they decide to come in as well, or will they opt to stay out long and see how Phil McDougall copes? That will be the big question, as meanwhile Kurt Van Hoornacker is into the pits from what was the lead of the AM class, meaning Navarro de Boer takes the lead. as they make their way on through, and Håkon Grebstad is very close behind him here, albeit I think Håkon Grebstad's made a mistake because that gap has opened up somewhat as they make their way on through, and well, we will have to see. Our top 3 in the Pro class have yet to pit. But it does look as though right now we are seeing some early pit stops within the Prime and the AM classes, as we also see that Matt Emmons is into the pits. And he'll be using that fast repair. We can see that the front has actually been fixed on that car slightly. There's no longer as much scratching. He's up onto the jacks here. So Matt Emmons is having a tyre change. He's going all in. It is going to cost him a huge amount of time with regards to that. Well, be fair, I say it's going to cost him a huge amount of time. That was a very quick pit stop for someone who's going to be losing a huge amount of time for a tyre change. And well, we'll have to wait and see with regards to that and see if Matt Emmons' pace takes it up a notch right now, because really he will want to try and hunt down this man and everybody between him and Matt Emmons, as we see Narodov over here make his way through turn at 7 and up into 8, but as he comes on through the left into a right sweep at this point in time, it is taking a very odd complexion, this race. There's a lot of uncertainty around it right now, as we are hearing that Ben Hicks has had a moment, and well, where is that? That is turn 3, I very much believe, and Ben Hicks is now off circuit and trying to rally across his way back on, as we've got Matt Emmons in a spin, just coming out of what was turn 3 as well. And if those are cold tyres, I can imagine the reason for that mistake is simply because those tyres are not up to temperature and trying to get on the throttle too early. Let's take a look. Well, we start with Ben Hicks here, who, as he made his way up into turn number 3, is going to be looking very smoothly right on board here. He comes on through the corner, second gear, and the car's already gone. You can see as he turned in there, the car just went. And Matt Emmons, as we ride on board with him, I think it's going to be a similar moment. Gets on the pattern, runs wide, in fact understeers there, so the reverse of what happens to Hicks. Hicks got a wall of oversteer, Matt Emmons got a wall of understeer, but both drivers with a similar result, which was it went horribly wrong. As now we return to live pictures here, and well, Matt Emmons, I think, will be getting his head down and thinking, right, you've made one mistake, don't make it two. As we can see Håkon Grebstad into the pits here, the Next Gen Racing orange driver deciding to come on in. A bit of a reactionary stop, I would imagine. We're not even halfway through the race yet, but what that does give is the initiative to Navarro de Bova, because he can choose now as race leader to essentially react to Håkon Grebstad. Of course, if we were to have a safety car, which we don't normally in this series have safety cars other than for what is the formation, i.e. the manual double foul rolling start, you can imagine Navarro de Bova may be conscious of a safety car, but now he can choose whether he decides to pit immediately, so he pits at the end of this lap to essentially cover off his competitors, or whether he decides, you know what, I'm just going to go long and see whether I can run in clear air for as long as possible, because Navarro de Bova right now does have a 4.7 second gap to Jason Landry up the road, and he has a 4.2 second gap to Håkon Grebstad behind him. And as he makes his way on through 7 and 8, it is the case that Navarro de Bova just keeping it nice and smooth and not having to worry anything, and that is where you want to be as the leader. You really want to be in clear air, you don't want any pressure behind you, because then you can put in laps, and of course with the team on the pit wall they can give you the information to say, okay, well, the driver who's just pitted, we want you to come in now because he's going faster since he's pitted, or vice versa. But as I can see there in the YouTube chat, Matt Fletcher Racing, and also we can see Ashley Beard racing in there, where it is the case. We've got Dean Fairclough, who's still leading, and Billy Fletcher behind. And we haven't talked about our leaders for some time, the pro leaders. It's been a bit quiet on their frontier, it must be said. But it is Dean Fairclough who's currently leading by what is a margin of 3 seconds ahead of Billy Fletcher. Although I must apologise, as I say, ladies and gentlemen, because that livery has changed since race number 1, and a little bit unexpected there. But we can see the Briton making his way on through and down. As we do say hello to Matt Fletcher Racing in the YouTube chat, and Ashley Beard Racing as well. We hope you're both doing very well indeed as they make their way on around here. But Billy Fletcher right now, well, in terms of his lap time, it must be said that Billy Fletcher on that last lap, a 49.77 versus Fairclough's 50.1. Fairclough has had the advantage since the start, but I think that Billy Fletcher is gradually inching this race along. I don't think he's pushing. I think what he's doing, he's running at about 90%, but running in a fuel-saving mindset at the moment, because he's let that gap open up, but he hasn't let it open up at a rate which would indicate that Deegan Fairclough is just naturally outpacing him, or at least that would be my expectation. I could be wrong. I do know that Fairclough is a very, very fast driver. We've seen him in the Mazda MX-5 Cup Series, hosted by Next Gen Racing as well, just how fast he is when he's out there on circuit, and indeed showing that in the Audi R8. But I'm wondering whether there's a spin in the towel here, whether there's a bit of conservatism going on with Billy Fletcher, as we can see Deegan Fairclough making his way down through turn number 11. Meanwhile, James Holman, as he makes his way on down towards what is turn number 11 here himself, we can see quite a gap between himself and Billy Fletcher up the road, the best part of what is 10.5 seconds as he makes his way down. But I think Billy Fletcher's actually had a mistake coming down that straight. as that gap has come down a little bit. But what we can see here is that James Holman completely soldiering on, and well, Deegan Fairclough setting a 49.9 that last lap, Billy Fletcher a 50.0. So if there was a mistake from Fletcher, he must have been on a monster lap to make that mistake. As James Holman here in the RD Sim Sport machine, I think he's enjoying this experience of being right up there in a podium position right now, and he has got a sizable gap to Jason Landry. As meanwhile we can see Jeremy DeBover here will continue to lead the Pro-Am class with Jean-Louis Deschamps behind, 1.5 seconds behind, and these two, well, they are great friends off circuit, and as they make the way down towards turn number 3 right now, rivals on circuit, and you can see it's the case that Jean-Louis Deschamps has his P2 rival in the championship right where he wants him, and that is in front of him. But I do think that Jean-Louis Deschamps may be pacing and also feeling the pain of those ceramic discs lighting up at the rear of that car as he makes his way down towards 5. But we look from them to Jason Landry here, who in P7 at the moment, P4 in the Pro class, really in a bit of world of his own. After that mistake coming through this corner in the opening lap, where we saw the rear of the car completely give way. And here's the case, the Ferrari driver now really just trying to make a recovery out of this, as we do cut back here to Callum Reed-Garson, who has just found his way past Håkon Grebstad as they make their way through turns 3 and 4. And we just take a look back at how that happened. This was the pass for P4 in the Pro-Am class. And we can see as they drag race their way down towards turn number 4. Callum Reed-Garson up the inside here in a classic up the inside manoeuvre under braking, and was Håkon Grebstad was able to try and look for the cutback, given the nature of 3 into 4, you can see it's the case that Callum Reed-Garson very carefully put the car right in the middle of the road and blocked off any return or counter attack. But as they make their way on through right now, we do look a little bit further back, and interestingly enough here, Edward Lack, who to be fair has already made 1 pit stop, if not 2 by the looks of things according to our timing sheet, as he comes on through. Here's the case that right now Edward Lack battling with James Slates, and Ben Hicks just behind, and Ben Hicks with that spin of course after coming out of the pits has seen his race come a cropper as they make their way down towards turn number 5, and it is the case that Edward Lack up the inside of James Slates there. And as they make their way through the corner, a classic move into turn number 5. And well, James Slate's not fighting it too hard. I think the RP Motorsport driver there just decided not to fight with a driver that he feels might be a bit faster with him, and instead just running in his tracks. But James Slate has yet to take a pit stop, so I think he's also conscious of the fact that he will lose time battling, and then he will lose time when he has to pit. And it's a sizable amount of pit time that he will have to expend. But as they make their way on through, coming out to turn number 9 and down towards turn number 10, in the meantime, it is the situation that our field has continued to space out, but we look back up towards our P2 man, Billy Fletcher here, and the comment in the YouTube chat there from Kirsty M. Shepherd to say Billy seems a bit faster in the altitude skin. Well, it may be the case that with the change of colours there, it may be given a little bit of a placebo effect, you never know. But as he makes his way down into turn number 9 at this point, Billy Fletcher looking at his lap times again, that last lap of 49.9, Deegan Fairclough a 50.0, and as they make the way down into turn number 10, I think Fletcher is managing this gap. I think he has a strategy in mind here, and he's waiting to see when Fairclough pits, or he will have a time in mind. And we have seen Fletcher, to be fair, we have seen over season 1 and also season 2, and this is why he's our season 1 champion in the Pro class. We have seen how he can manage long stints, particularly that opening stint. I think the longest stint he did in season 1 was somewhere in the region of 47 to 48 minutes, while the longest stints we had recorded, and that was simply through a massive amount of fuel saving. And well, is he doing that right now? That is the question. I think he is, although he is starting to inch that gap down little by little as he makes his way across the timeline here to come to the end of lap number 17 and on to lap 18. Deegan Fairclough a 49.8, Fletcher a 49.7. There is a reaction between the two of them. I think Fairclough is aware of the fact that Billy Fletcher is matching him, if not going a tenth of a lap faster as we look at our race leader. But every time Fairclough ups his pace, Fletcher is upping the pace by a tenth as well. It's almost as if the two of them are goading one another along at the moment, with Fletcher being the one to do the goading and Fairclough to respond to it. But we will wait and see as they make the way on or around. But looking from our two leaders up front, as they both share the same camera space there, as they make the way on down into turn number 5, and as they come on through here, lovely to see the two Audis right up front. Of course, the Audi being one of those very tricky cars in our capable drivers' hands. It is the case that James Holman a bit further back here in P3 and just soldiering on here for what would be one of his season best, if not his season best performance in the feature race, if he's able to finish in P3 at this point in time as he makes his way on through. But then as we look from him to Jeremy DeBover here, we can see it's the case that Motegi B1 driver here just in a very comfortable lead at the moment, and the big driver who we have to ask ourselves about is Phil McDougall. Where is Phil McDougall after that pit stop? Well, Phil McDougall, who was running behind Jeremy Debova at the time he decided to pit, he's currently running in P12 overall, that's P6 in class, and in terms of where he is on the circuit, he's coming up towards what is turn number 3 right now, whereas it is the case that Jeremy Debova and company are making their way through turn number 9. So Phil McDougall, in terms of his lap times, with his last lap was a 54.7, because he did have an off-circuit, whereas Jeremy Debova and Jean-Louis Deschamps are lapping in the 50.5s. We'll wait to see what Phil McDougall's lap is at the end of this lap, but I suspect that this early pit stop has not helped Phil McDougall as much as he would have liked it to, and if anything, actually, it's put him a little bit further back. I think a mistake or two has been added into that, but Phil McDougall deciding to go for the undercut, I think it may not have been the right call to make, as meanwhile, as he makes his way on through, we can see it is the case on the time screen, the top left corner of your screen, that Deegan Fairclough was 0.3 of a second slower on that previous lap compared to Billy Fletcher. It is on, and I think Billy Fletcher is now starting to cut away and chisel at that lead that Deegan Fairclough has built up. But we look from Phil McDougall here back to Ben Hicks, the Ferrari driver, who is catching up to the back of James Slates, who's just ahead of him as the two Ferraris make the way through the sweeping section of turn 6 through to 9. Now, as they make the way on through turn 7 and 8 here, you can see Ben Hicks really closing up rapidly versus the RP Motorsports driver, the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver here. Very comfortable on the run there through turn 8 by comparison, as Navarro Debova is into the pits. As I look out my commentary box window, the AM leader has come on in. We'll wait to see where he comes out, as George Bland is making his way on through. And well, as we see here is the case that George Bland goes into lead of the race in terms of our timing sheets. Ben Hicks continuing to inch closer to James Slates and gets the better exit there out of turn 10. Now it's going to be the drag race down towards turn 11. And well, of course, the cars being identical here in terms of setup, it will all be about the drivers and the slipstream. And Ben Hicks, he looks for it. No, he doesn't go in for this one. He decides to tuck in and wait. I think Ben Hicks, who goes a little bit deep there from the overspeed and the dirty air coming off the back of the Ferrari in front of him. Slets, they're just keeping his cool and holding on as they make the way into 13, 14. You can see the difference in lines there. Slets has to take a wider run through 12 to give himself the rotation into 13, but it compromises his average transition speed between the apex of 13, 14. Hicks much tighter to 13, and as they make their way down to the braking zone for 1, you can see Hicks there's down the inside. James Slates makes a mistake under braking, and it's going to be a move up the inside there. Now, can Hicks seal the door shut before they come to turn 3? Well, he's got the overspeed here, and James Slates tucks in, but will Slates come back out for a return move into 3? I think if he's going to go for it, he'll be very brave on the brakes, but he's not gone for it, and Ben Hicks there, just simply by being on that inside line and trying to psych James Slates into a mistake, he was able to do it, and Slates then going a bit too deep under braking into 1, and that's how Ben Hicks has now moved up to P8 in class, P17 overall, and he continues to chase down Ed Lack as he makes his way on through at this point with 35 minutes of the race complete, 25 still to go. And we have had 2 retirements since the start of the race, Didi Valemi and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. We have also had what was the retirement or the non-classification in terms of not starting the race of Matt Caruana and Luke McKeown. We still do have 21 drivers out on circuit. And well, I was going to say, well, how are things going a bit further up the road? And as I look up the road, one place up the road, it is Håkon Grebstad, who has had a mother of all moments coming out of turn number 9. And that is not good news for our AM driver, who was trying to hunt down what was P2 in the AM class. And let's take a look back at what's happened to Håkon Grebstad, who has just not had a good day at Motegi. Well, as he made his way then up into turn 9, he's going to come in under braking here, trail braking his way on in as he comes through the apex. Understeers a little bit. In fact, it looks as though he understeered initially and put the rear right tyre onto the grass before the curb, and in the end that caused the car to go into a mode of oversteer as he got on the power thinking all 4 wheels were still on what track surfaces, and as a result you can see that there with a mistake, and it has cost him very dearly. So the car's in good condition, the tyres won't have picked up too much scrub as a result of that, but the problem is, of course, the German driver now, he has lost a plethora of time as he now tries to get himself back up to speed. He lost the best part of 10 seconds from that mistake, and now he's got it all to do again. But meanwhile, having made their pit stops, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Navarro Debova, who went longer as, oh goodness me, and we looked at Kurt Van Hoenacker, and it's almost as if the commentator's curse is striking at anyone who we look at in the AM class, because Kurt Van Hoenacker there with a rare mistake just lost the rear end very slightly coming out of 4, but to be fair, he caught it very well, and he hasn't lost too much time. He's lost to Navarro Debova 8 seconds there in catching the car, but I think that's a lot better than losing 20 seconds of putting the car right into the wall, plus also the damage that Kurt Van Hoenacker was about to say. Pitted earlier than Navarro Debova and has come out just behind him. Navarro Debova gaining by running longer, and it is right now the case that Motegi B2 driver, well, if he keeps up this pace, he's going to be on course to take the win in this feature, because it looks as though he's completely in a world of his own. He's not the leader of the AM class right now, and we should look to George Bland here in the Porsche 991, who makes his way through turn 11 and up through 12 into 14. And the MV Esports driver here, will he pull into the pits this time? No, he decides to keep going, and now he's made a mistake. He's locked up on the braking into turn 13. The rear just coming loose there from the trail brake, and as he brings the car back together, well, any opportunity he did have of effectively jumping the road over a Kurt van Hoenacker by running long or getting closer to them, that has now been cut away. As meanwhile, I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Deegan Fairclough here, who has had an off, and now Billy Fletcher is all over the back of him as they make the way through turn number 10. Now, how has this happened? We'll let you know very shortly. The more important thing right now is that these two are battling for position, and Deegan Fairclough, who's had a major moment earlier on, has brought the two together now as they make the way down into turn number 11. The battle for the lead of the Pro class, and overall you can see Deegan Fairclough will feel as though he's been inconvenienced here by Matt Evans, who is a lap down. The blue flags will be waving, and as they come through turn number 12 and up into 14, Evans continues. It's very difficult to give way. He'll have to do it on the start finish straight here as they make the way on, and Matt Evans immediately moves out the way there, caught at probably one of the worst times you can be caught, and you can see it's Deegan Fairclough here who moves to the inside and then weaves back over to the racing line for turn number 1. He's going to have to be careful about that weaving, because at the end of the day, if Billy Fletcher was to get alongside, it could be the case that the two of them would come together. But as they make the way down out of 2 and in towards 3, it is the case that Billy Fletcher right now really trying to put that pressure on after what seems to have been an absolute plethora of time for this one to build up, but now it has finally come together. And remember, these two have yet to pit in terms of making that mandatory pit stop. So as a result, for these two, they are running on a long stint. And it's also going to be about who flinches first, who gives in first and comes into the pits. I think for Billy Fletcher right now, he does have a little bit of initiative, given that he is the pursuer, but he hasn't really made any noticeable mistakes. As I see out my commentary box window, Håkon Grebstad comes into the pits from P9 overall. That was P5 in class, and he will drop down the field to a degree as we see Phil McDougall come on through very shortly. But we continue to focus on the here and now, what's on our screens, and it is the case that Billy Fletcher, given this pursuit, this relentless pursuit of Deegan Fairclough, and Fletcher knows how important this result is. If he takes this win, it will draw him closer to Matt Caruana, and if Caruana even drops one result at Bathurst, that could be it in terms of swinging the championship back in his favour. He needs this win as they make the way through 10. You can see Deegan Fairclough going a little bit deep on the inside there, blocking Fletcher by going deep and putting the car in the middle of the road, and now as they make the way down the eastern circuit start finish straight, you can see how Fairclough literally running on the limit on the inside. Fletcher's going to have the overspeed down into turn 11 on the outside the racing line, and Fairclough goes very defensive. It cost him all the speed, and as they make the way into 12, you can see that Fletcher is going to try and swing it to the outside. He's going to use all the track. This is very brave stuff from Fletcher, and as they come on through 13, 14, there's contact, and as they make the way on exit, we can see that Deegan Fairclough, there was contact, was pushed wide slightly. He flashes his lights, not happy with what's happened, but that was very, very close, and I thought it was going to be the case there may be some contact and going too wide through the tightest part of the circuit in terms of it being only one car wide, but let's take a look back at how that happened. So riding on board here with Billy Fletcher as he comes on through, you'll see they're side by side through the corner. Now he was on the inside, but I think as he got on the power, I think there was a little bit of a tank slapper there on the rear end, and that may have just unsettled the car and led to the contact. But let's take a look at it from Deegan Fairclough's point of view by comparison. And as we can see, as they make the way on through, looking from the exterior camera, it is the case that as they make the way on through, well, just a little bit of contact between the two of them. They're just a sliver, but it was enough to knock Deegan Fairclough wide. And, well, I think the shoulds may be asked to take a look at that one. But it is Billy Fletcher who now leads this race by 9/10 of a second and trying to run away from Deegan Fairclough as they make the way through 8 and up into 9. We were going to take a look back at how it all started off between the two of them in terms of a mistake, but I think that has passed right now because we have seen the battle between the two of them commence and run on through. And as they make the way down into turn number 10 right now, it is a situation where Fairclough, I think, will look to try and come back as rapidly as possible and not give Fletcher the opportunity to run away with the proceedings. And as they make the way down towards turn number 11 this time around, I can tell you that with what was Håkon Grebstad pitting, Phil McDougall has moved up into P10 overall. That's P5 in class, and he is now chasing after Håkon Grebstad, who has just passed him, in fact. as our drivers come on through here to complete what is another lap, completing lap number 23. It is the case that our leaders have gone 42 minutes without pitting here. They are going as long as humanly possible before they pit. They want to avoid traffic, I suspect, out on circuit, and that's understandable as James Holman is the first of the top three to pull the trigger on his pit stop, and as he makes his way on in, it is the case. I think Holman here is really competing to make sure he doesn't get jumped by Jason Landry. But to be fair, Jason Landry, where is the Canadian driver? He's only coming through underneath the bridge there through turn number 12 now. He's yet to pit and he carries on around here. But the more important thing, here are our top three in the Prime class. That's Jeremy de Boverin and Jean-Louis Deschamps behind. They park up. It's going to be about who can have the faster pit crew here as we wait to see. You can see Daniel Holman's come on in as well. He's not quite in on this unless one of them has a very slow stop. Callum Garton making his way on through. He's made a pit stop already, has Callum Garton, and we can see here Jeremy DeBover coming out of the pits, but Callum Garton has jumped the pair of them with the undercut, so it means that the battle for the lead has now turned into a battle for P2, unless Jeremy DeBover or Jean-Louis Deschamps can gain in the close, but Callum Garton coming out of nowhere with an undercut and a half, as we can see that Jean-Louis Deschamps has lost a bit more time in the pit stop, and now it is a case he's in P3. Can he hunt down P2 man Jeremy DeBover, or will it be Jeremy DeBover who runs away with things? And I must admit, I've been caught a bit blindsided by Callum Garton coming through with what has been a very impressive undercut as he makes his way down towards turn number 5. But your leader in the Prime class is now the Lamborghini driver, Callum Garton, as he makes his way through turn number 5. My goodness, that is an undercut and a half. One of the biggest undercuts we've seen, much like in previous races where he's pulled off the mammoth undercuts, and he's done it again today. But as he makes his way right now into what is turn number 7, we look to George Bland here, who finds himself ahead of Håkon Grebstad. What with the fact that Håkon Grebstad making that critical error at turn 9, and George Bland in P3 in the AM class, he's made his pit stop. Both of them have made their mandatory pit stop. And speaking of mandatory pit stops, it's kicking off here. We can see that Billy Fletcher and Dean Fairclough both into the pits. Both Audi drivers coming on in. Now the question will be, of course, who is going to have the faster stop between the two of them? Well, Billy Fletcher already in the pit box, and Jason Landry here coming on through. I don't think he's going to be involved in this in terms of he's too far back if he did stay out to get involved, as he makes his way into the pits. So instead we look at our leaders instead, and it's Deegan Fairclough who pulls away first here, and Billy Fletcher is still being serviced in the pit lane. Now this is unexpected. We thought Billy Fletcher was doing all the fuel saving work, but it's Deegan Fairclough who goes on and into the lead of the Pro class. There is another spin in the tail, and Billy Fletcher is still in his pit box, and we can see that Jason Landry has now come through. What on earth has happened to Billy Fletcher? Something has gone horribly wrong, but what it does mean is that Deegan Fairclough is now your leader by a sizable margin, and I can't see Fletcher being up on the jacks, and well, that is Jason Landry coming out, so Jason Landry moves up to what is P3 in the Pro class, as James Holman has essentially come through to take P2, but it means that Jason Landry is getting, and Billy Fletcher is now leaving the pits here, and my goodness, Billy Fletcher, well, we thought he was on course here to potentially battle for the win, and it is the case now. He finds himself all the way down in P5 in class, P10 overall, and well, now the Briton has got it all to do, and he's only got 14.5 minutes to get it done. And I mean, with the time we've got remaining, the number of laps remaining, he's either got to pull off a magic trick here to get himself up into the top 3, or it's the case that this is not looking to be the race he wanted, as he makes his way out of 4 and up into 5. But that is a shock to the system, and not a good one, as he makes his way down into turn number 5. As he makes his way out through the corner now, we look a bit further back and we see Edward Lack here closing down what is Håkon Grebstad, and well, we said it was going to come alive after and during the pit stops, and well, this race is delivering on that promise, as we can see here Edward Lack chasing down Håkon Grebstad as they make the way into turn 5, and as they roll the cars down into the braking zone here, it is the case that Edward Lack just building up that speed and making its way on through. But now the big question will be, as they come through the switching sections, the sweeping sections of turn 6 through to 9, can Edward Lack find a way to close up to the back of the BMW, which should be vulnerable through these corners? It should be the heavier car to transition the weight, particularly through the left into right of turn 7 and 8, and as they make the way on through, will it be the case that Lack has an opportunity in turn 10 or turn 11 this time around? We can see here he takes a deeper run into the hairpin of 9 compared to Håkon Grebstad, but Grebstad is able to get a good exit there, keeping himself nice and clear for the time being, as they now make the way into the turn 10 hairpin, and as they come on through, we can see how Lack going deeper there to give himself the momentum coming out the corner, but he's still a bit too far back, I suspect, to be able to look for the move this time round as they make their way down into turn number 11. They come down in towards the braking zone very shortly, and as they go in on the brakes, it is the case that we see Edward Lack here not going for the move. But as they make their way on through, we do look a little bit further back up the order, and I can tell you that Phil McDougall right now is tucked in behind both Billy Fletcher and Håkon Grebstad. He's let both of them through. Of course, the Pro-Am driver here not battling with the Pro drivers, letting them go and do their own race as they make the way on through. But going from one of the CXR Project Black drivers to another one who it has not been his day, Matthew Hodges here in P21, P10 in class, as he makes his way through what is turn 8 and up towards 9. He's going to look for the move on James Slates here, and he's going to go up the inside. So he's going to try and hold the outside of the hairpin. As they make their way out, Matthew Hodges gives him the space to be able to get on the power, but you can see Hodges getting the move done. Will Slates look to come back here into turn number 10? I do not think so, but he's going to go deep in Slates. Will he try and go for the long run all the way down towards turn number 11? I think he's too far back and he hasn't had the traction out the corner he would like, and that gap of half a second is not coming down at a rate that would indicate he can go for that potential lunge on the inside down into 11. So it is the case the two are traded places, and it's now James Slates who's P21, Matthew Hodges P20 overall. But as they make the way on through, we look a little bit further up the order. I can tell you that Matt Emmons here, he's just had an off at what was, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that does look to be coming all the way down towards turn number 3. So he's had the off at turn number 2, and now as he tries to get himself back up to speed here, it is the case that Emmons down in P19, P6 in class. It has not been his day as he's had another off there, and well, that is very unfortunate. I think for Emmons at this point, it is the case about just bringing the car home and just looking to Bathurst. It may be the case that the championship is looking a little bit further out of his grasp come the end of tonight, but at the same time I think he will take some solace in the fact that Håkon Grebstad has dropped a major result today, although he is battling with George Bland right now and could be looking to get himself onto the AM podium come the end of this feature race. It's going to be very close between the two of them as they make their way on through turn number 10, but the German driver right now has got a very tricky opponent ahead of him, and I think both Matthew Addy and also what will be Matt Emmons and also Stefan Gamborg-Rasmussen, they will all be praying at this point that George Bland is able to hold Seeger at bay, particularly Addy, you can see in the rear of the picture there, because right now if things finish as they are, you can see it would gain and really recover from what was a disastrous sprint race, and well, you can see Bland has got it wrong there in the run down out of the corner, and Bland going very slowly. I think George Bland has got a bit of a problem because that was a very slow run out of 11 and pretty much, well, it wasn't quite a lift off, but he had no speed whatsoever, and I think George Bland in the end just giving the place up, thinking that it's a case of managing the car to the end, and will the Porsche, we did say earlier on, a very vulnerable car over the distance, particularly on the brakes, and I think for George Bland right now, the Englishman is just feeling the pain on those brakes as he makes his way down towards turn number 3. The car just looking very unsettled, but we look from him to behind and we can see that Matthew Addy here closing up. 10 minutes to go at this point in time, and Matthew Addy continuing to try and hunt down P3 in the AM class in this race. We see George Bland going very slowly there out of the exit of 4, and you can see Matthew Addy swinging around here. Perhaps it's the case that George Bland hasn't got enough fuel to go to the end, and is in fact trying to fuel save as much as possible, as we're hearing that Callum Regarton's into the pit lane. So Callum Regarton with an unexpected last minute stop, and well, as a result, well, I think this might have been a scheduled stop in fact, because we saw him pit quite early on, but where are Jeremy Debova and Jean-Louis Deschamps? Here they are, so they come back into the lead of the Pro-Am race, and I think for them, that will both be breathing a sigh of relief and thinking to themselves, right, Callum Regarton has had to pit, we are still in this, and as they make the way on through, which Jeremy Debova is now to lose with an advantage of what is 1.7 seconds over Jean-Louis Deschamps, who you see at the rear of the picture as they make the way down towards turn number 3. Now, what can Deschamps throw at Jeremy Debova? The two Belgians, they've been near inseparable in terms of pace, but it does seem as though Debova just has a slight advantage. Half a tenth a lap is the advantage he seems to have every so often, but it's so close between these two lap after lap. Now, I think Deschamps may have been saving it all up for the last couple of laps. I think that's what he may have been doing. He may have been protecting the car, and we'll have to wait and see, because given the fact we are currently 51 minutes in, and where we are on circuit, we anticipate that equates to approximately 4 more laps after this one, depending on how our leaders progress around the circuit. But it is the case that right now, with 4 more laps after this one, Jean-Louis Deschamps has got to pull his finger out in terms of closing that gap down rapidly, because if that gap stays at 1.6 seconds, but already it's come down quite a bit in terms of the fact Jeremy Debover getting a bit of a mistake there, coming out to turn number 8 and down into 9, and that gap has come down by 0.4 of a second. And could it be the case that Jeremy Debover has simply overdone it a little bit on the Audi as he makes his way on through turn number 10? Well, both drivers will now really be going pedal to the metal here in order to try and bring this home. And meanwhile, in the AM class, from one Debover to another, it's the younger member of the family, the son rather than the father. It is the son Debover right now from Change BE2, who is putting in a solid performance here and holding on to the lead. And he's got a gap of what is 6 seconds to Kurt Van Hoenacker, his teammate in P2 in class. But meanwhile, Billy Fletcher here, who's now having to recover what was a very long pit stop, a pit stop that was 1 minute 20 seconds, whereas the average pit stops around here have been somewhere in the region of 42 to 44 seconds for the schedule start, and Billy Fletcher hunting down Håkon Grebstad in the closing minutes of this race as they make the way down towards turn number 1. Now as he comes roaring on down at this point, the pro driver here trying to close up to the back of Håkon Grebstad, and as they make the way into the right-hander as turn 1-2, you can see it is the case that hunting down the McLaren and making their way on through, but he's not close enough to try and effect a pass. He'll have to wait for another opportunity a little bit later on as they make the way down into the braking zone here. But as they come on in, it is the case that meanwhile up the road, a bit further up the road, we do have our Pro-Am leaders who are going into turn number 5. And that shows you the pace our pros have been lapping at by comparison. But let's not forget as well, we do have James Holman here making his way around in P2, and the RD Simsport driver, I think it will be music to his ears to be seeing himself right now running in P2, and he's not got long to go here to bring home what will be a season best performance, and he will be most pleased with this one as he makes his way through turn number 9 and heads up towards turn number 10. He does have James Slates ahead in there in the foreground there, the RP Motorsports driver who's a lap down and will be required to respect the blue flags as and when they're waved, which they will be, particularly on the straight, an ideal opportunity, and he moves out the way immediately and does a small lift off. But meanwhile, speaking of a driver who not wants to move out the way, that is Håkon Grebstad, who's just ahead of Matthew Addy. This is the battle for the final podium position in the AM class in this feature race as they make the way through 3-4, and as they come out of the second hairpin and now make their way down towards turn number 5, Matthew Addy knows he needs to beat Håkon Grebstad here to really keep himself up towards the front of the pack. He knows that with the retirement of Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, it is the case that Matthew Addy will gain considerably over his joint leader at the point in time. Remember, going into this round, Rasmussen and Addy were joint leaders in terms of points, and it was only on countback that Addy was leading this championship. And well, with Rasmussen having to retire before he started the race and picked the wrong car, it is the case that Matthew Addy right now, if he picks this result up and picks up the P3, he will be ahead going into the season finale at Bathurst. But of course, it's not going to keep him safe, but it gives him an advantage. It puts more pressure on his pursuers, as we're hearing that Callum Regarton has retired from this race with a technical difficulty in that Lamborghini Huracan. They had to bring it into the pits. It was an unexpected stop in the end, and it's the case the Lamborghini is out of the race. So we had another retirement, 20 remain, and will Matthew Addy trying to close this down with only 5 minutes to go by the time they have cleared turn number 11. And well, what can he do here in terms of trying to bring that gap down to Håkon Grebstad? Well, you can see Sigurd has gone a little bit deep there under braking into turn number 11 as they make the way into 12. Now, I think what Addy's got to do, he's got to be there and an ever-present danger. He's just got to be close enough to try and intimidate. We know the BMW very strong on the straights, very good coming out of the corners, but we look from them very briefly to the battle between Håkon Grebstad and Billy Fletcher as they go side by side, coming up through 7 and 8, and as they make the way through, Grebstad is ahead by a small margin. He converts that into an advantage, and as they make the way down into the braking zone here for turn number 9, you can see Grebstad parks in the apex, and Billy Fletcher just getting a face full of McLaren as they make the way through 9 and up into 10. I think being caught out by Grebstad parking it on apex, but still a small tap, it won't hurt the cars too much. And as they make the way through the right handle behind, that's Daniel Holman, the Pro-Am driver, who just watches on innocently at this point on the lead lap with them as they make the way down towards turn number 11. And as they come roaring on down the straight here, it is the case that both drivers pushing on as much as they possibly can, but my goodness how close it is between these guys. But let's take a look at how that all kicked off. So as they're making their way out to turn 5 and into 6, you can see Billy Fletcher making his way to the inside to outside line here, and then Håkon Grebstad just able to have a bit more confidence as they made their way through 7. Billy Fletcher, to be fair, positioned himself well on that inside tight line for 8, but he didn't quite have the space to operate as Håkon Grebstad had shut the door down as much as he could, and then there was that small bit of contact between the two of them there. I think it was netcode contact rather than direct contact, but they go racing once again. And as we return to them now, it is as we left them in terms of Håkon Grebstad leading 4 minutes to go. Well, 3.5 minutes plus the final lap of this race. Approximately 2 more laps including this one. And well, my goodness, how could it all end? Well, we know Deegan Fairclough, unless there is anything major that happens to him, he has got this one in the bag, we believe now. Our race leader in the Pro class and overall leader. But meanwhile, Billy Fletcher trying to find his way past Håkon Grebstad and continuing to give that pursuit. But meanwhile, Matthew Addy in a similar situation here, as we saw them last time making the way through these corners before we jumped away. We come back to him in that battle for the final podium position of the AM class, and Matthew Addy keeping that pressure on as much as he possibly can. I think it's going to be a major challenge, as we're hearing that Edward Lack has jumped to the pits. And hold up a second, ladies and gentlemen, Navarro de Bova has had an off, and oh goodness me, what has happened to our race leader in the AM class right at the final whistle here with only 2 laps to go? And I think Håkon Schott has been involved in an incident as well, but both drivers have been involved in some sort of an incident, and that has meant that Kurt van Hoenacker has closed up massively, as meanwhile Håkon Grebstad and Billy Fletcher are side by side coming through the turn 10 hairpin. There's contact between the two of them. Oh goodness me, and hold up a second, that's a little bit wide. Don't know the full contacts there, but there's a few elbows coming out between these drivers, and I think there's a little bit of a rivalry kicking off. And as they make their way down into turn number 11, we will take a look back at exactly what's happened, but Billy Fletcher is ahead. Let's take a flick back. Well, this is how it all began, and this was when they were making their way up towards turn number 9, and Fletcher went for it very late in the day, and well, Håkon Grebstad turned on in, and that's where the initial contact happened. You could see that Fletcher was a bit unsettled then as they made their way down into turn 10. This is when we joined them, and Fletcher tried going all the way around the outside, and on corner exit, the two of them came together. But to be fair, Håkon Grebstad, I think, gave as much space as he could without at the same time trying to compromise Fletcher's line. So as a result, I think a little bit of elbows out between the two of them, but at the same time both wanting that win as much as they possibly can. But meanwhile, we return back to live pictures, and it's a drag race between Matthew Addy and, well, as you can see it, Seagull on the inside, Addy on the outside, as they make the way under a break, and Seagull goes deep on the brakes here into 11 as they come on through, and it's the case you can see it holds on for now. Matthew Addy not able to find a cutback, and instead having to wait for the opportunity as they make the way through turn 13 and 14, and it's going to go on to what is their fight. Well, they're going to have one more lap after this one, because our race leader, Deegan Fairclough, is coming to the end of the current lap, so we will see what is a 33rd lap at this circuit as our drivers make the way on through. And as they come through right now, Matthew Addy is going to only have a couple more chances here, but we take a look back at what happened to our AM leader, Navarro de Bova. So this was only moments ago, and well, I think Navarro de Bova is going to succumb to what we've seen many drivers succumb to here into turns 3 and 4, and he went a little bit deep into 3 and then got caught out on the, what was the entry curb into 4, and then there was contact there from Håkon Schott, who came through blind, and it's the case that Navarro de Bova right now, with not long to go, well, he will be praying this race is not going to fall away from him right at the final curtain. But meanwhile, Matthew Addy still starting behind. You can see it, and if you're wondering where Navarro de Bova is right now, here he is in the wounded Audi with his teammate Kurt van Hoenacker behind. To be fair to the pair of them, they have got what is the best part of a 15 to 16 second advantage over Jochen Seeger in P3. So for them, if they were to run in formation to the very end, I don't think they're going to be too worried about this one in terms of finishing in formation. It's not going to be a worry as such, but it will be the case that right now, I think, well, Kurt van Hoenacker may look to come on past his teammate here, depending on what team orders are in place as they make their way down towards turn number 11 here. Kurt van Hoenacker looks to the inside, and well, I think he's going to go for the move, but he doesn't fully get his nose in there, and as a result gives the space to Navarro de Bova to come through. They will go on for one more lap, but as they make the way on through, we look back to Jochen Seeger and Matthew Addy as they come down towards turn 11, and Jochen Seeger this time clearing Matthew Addy as they come down into the corner. They will have to do another tour of the circuit. It is not over for them. They will go down to one more lap as they come on through, and Jochen Seeger at this point must be thinking to himself, just let it end, because he has literally had to wrestle this race into his control, and whilst it's not an opportunity to win, it's huge points. But I can tell you who is picking up an opportunity of a win, and he's about to seize it as he makes his way through the final 3 corners. It's been a very strong start, it's been a strong middle stint, and it's been a strong finish. It is Deegan Fairclough who comes around to take the win in the Pro class at Motegi in the feature race. A brilliant drive from Fairclough, and in the end, well, he was in a world of his own, it would seem, as meanwhile James Holman as he makes his way through turn number 11, and it is making his way all the way to the finish line now. The RD Simsport driver has shown that sometimes it's all about just putting in the laps and being consistent, but as he comes through the final corner, it is going to be James Holman who takes second place overall and in the Pro Class in a fantastic start to finish drive, and then it is going to be Jeremy DeBova who holds on in the end to take P3 as he crosses the line in a brilliant drive from Challenge B1 in the Pro-Am class. Fantastic drive and a podium overall. Jean-Louis Deschamps in the end just did not quite have it in terms of bringing the car home as he makes his way to finish. In fact, as he makes his way through, that is Jason Landry just behind there, coming home in P5. Billy Fletcher in the MP6 ahead of Håkon Grebstad. And then we have got what is Daniel Holmer rounding off the podium for the Pro-Am class. Phil McDougall P9, Håkon Schott P10 as he makes his way on down here. But as they come on down into turn number 11, you can see here Kurt van Hoornacker let on through there by Navarro DeBova in the wounded Audi, which just cannot make it home. That Audi is not in a comfortable place, and whilst it was Navarro DeBova's to bring on home as they come on through the final corners, are they going to swap once again, or will it be, I think it's Kurt van Hoornacker who takes the win in the AM class for a superb drive with his teammate just behind, and it was one critical mistake in the end that saw them swap places. Ben Hicks P13 in a drive which he recovered to P6, and it is going to be Jochen Seeger who has fought to the very end, and he brings home third place in the AM class with a result which will keep his championship hopes alive. And Matthew Addy finishes behind them, P4 in the AM class, P15 overall, with George Brand just behind them in what has been a much improved feature race for him. P16, P5 in class. Matt Emmons in the end, P17. Matthew Hodges, P18. James States will come home in P19 when all is said and done. In fact, he's already been classified as finished as he is a lap down. But my goodness, what a race. But one driver right now, well, I think part of him will not be able to believe the fact that he was able to have such a rapid pit stop compared to Billy Fletcher in the end, and it was a pit stop that made it all said and done. But Fairclough, to be fair, puts in a huge effort from start to finish, and you cannot take away from what was a brilliant drive from the number 87 driver as he makes his way into the pits. And indeed, I think he will be very, very proud of that one. But as he makes his way on in, we look to Kurt van Hoornacker here, the AM driver, who I think he will feel a little bit of a twinge of sadness in the fact that his teammate, who had been driving absolutely flawlessly, dropped it on the penultimate lap, and in the end it was Van Hoornacker who came home to take the AM win. But I think at the same time, Challenge B2 will be very pleased at the fact that the two drivers are right there on the podium and they have driven a solid race. Well, we're going to be hearing from Kurt Van Hoornacker and our other class winners very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back in approximately 3 to 4 minutes for our post-race interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. My goodness, what an unpredictable feature race in the end. And whilst the battles were a bit sporadic to begin with, they really came alive following the pit stops. And what a treat we had. And speaking of treats, I think Deegan Fairclough will be very happy with the treat and the feature win that he's been able to score. So let's hear from the Pro Class winner himself as we bring him into the interview room. Hello Deegan, can you hear me? If you're speaking into your microphone, Deegan, it's not quite coming through at the moment.
Hello?
Hello, Deegan. Yep, you're coming through loud and clear. So, Deegan,
Brilliant.
Firstly, congratulations on what was a very hard-fought win between yourself and Billy Fletcher. How does it feel to have taken the win in the Pro Class in the feature?
I mean, yeah, super happy with that result. Was not expecting that at all. And I wasn't sure what happened to Billy in the pit lane. Maybe sped on entry, but I mean, it was fantastic. Really enjoyed it today. And even in the sprint race was fantastic. But yeah, really happy.
So just breaking it down, it's fantastic to hear how much you enjoyed the racing today. At the start of the race, we saw it really seemed as though the Pro Plaque started off very tight. You were right up the front, of course, with what was James Holman. But then after the opening couple of laps with Jason Landry and also what was at the time Håkon Grebstad dropping it coming out of turn 4, it seemed as though yourself and Billy were breaking away, but particularly yourself, you started to open up a gap. What was the strategy? Were you trying to break the toe and give yourself a 2 to 3 second margin?
Well, pretty much was just trying to save fuel. From previous races, I learned that I had to save fuel and tyres massively, and that was my plan. And then I saw at one point he was gaining so much time in towards the end of the first stint. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have to push quite hard. And then I made a little mistake, and then he made a pass on me, which I was a little bit skeptical about that overtake, but it was fine. It ended up well for me in the end of it. So yeah, was just trying to save fuel that whole time. Even towards the end, my pit stop was perfect, but I still had to save a little bit of fuel because it said I would finish on literally 0 litres. So I was pretty much focused on that and just keeping it clean and smooth the whole race, and then it worked out. So yeah, really happy.
Oh, indeed, and we could see that smoothness and also that tactic, as you were saying there, with regards to just focusing on the race and keeping the laps coming on in. And I do have to ask, when Fletcher, of course, seemed to have that very long pit stop by comparison, did the complexion of the race change in your mind at that point, or did you think to yourself, you know what, I've just got to keep my head down, keep putting in those lap times, and make sure this race is out of anybody's reach?
Well, yeah, I think it was like a 20-second lead in the end, but I was at the start really confused on why his pit stop was so long. It didn't look like he sped massively into the pit lane, or maybe he had a drive-through at the start. Who knows? But after that pit stop, I saw the gap was just huge. So then my fuel calculator said like you're going to be ending on 0.0. So I was a little bit worried about that. So I was like saving fuel like quite a bit in the stint 2, and then it's ended up really well for me. Sorry, I'm really speechless. Really happy today.
Oh, indeed. And just with regards to, of course, over the course of the sprint race, we saw in the sprint race the cars seemed quite manageable, and the only really towards the end where some drivers' brake disc lighting up. But in the feature, we saw it's very challenging conditions out there in terms of managing the tyres and the brakes. And we know that the Audi can be quite a difficult car to drive over the whole hour. What was it like from your perspective in terms of managing the car at a circuit which really is all about hairpins?
Yeah, well, with the Audi, you've got to be really smooth, and with like braking to save your tyres under braking, you have to like not hit ABS massively. You've kind of got to take a chill pill and just take it really smooth, calm, and it will come your way. But even in the sprint race, you've got to do the same. It's difficult racing the front lot. They're ridiculously quick, and so I've managed to keep up with them. Wasn't sure why Matt and Luke was in the feature race, or were they? I was not sure, so I was a little bit worried. Couldn't see where they were because I knew they would be coming through the pack really quickly. But yeah, with the Audi, you've got to be really smooth. But other than that, yeah, really happy with the night, how it's gone.
Oh, indeed. And now looking ahead to the final round in a week's time, Bathurst, the circuit which many love and many loathe. How are you feeling for the Australian mountain?
Well, Bathurst is one of my favourite tracks. I really love it. I really enjoy how it's like a street, well, not a street track. It's a really tight track. I really enjoy the tight tracks, and you can get some really good overtakes if you can manage it properly or be sensible there. But yeah, I can't wait for the final round.
Oh, well, we look forward to seeing you take to the Australian circuit. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room. But most importantly, congratulations on what was a superb drive to victory.
Thank you very much. Also, quickly, just want to say a huge thank you to Jam Sport, Sicily, Matt Tools and Car Gods, and even my parents down here. They come straight in. They've watched the whole night, and yeah, I'm really grateful and really happy with how the night's gone.
Oh, I'm sure they'll all be best pleased, particularly your parents, and they'll be grateful to hear you giving that shout out there. And well, indeed, I think it just goes to show the class and calibre of your driving tonight. And well, could you make it another pair, well, a win at least, or perhaps even a pair of wins at Bathurst? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. I'm super excited.
Oh, we look forward to seeing you then. But until then, take care and all the best, my friend.
Thank you very much.
So hearing there from Deegan Fairclough, very happy with his performance, and you could just sense that in his voice in terms of the fact that he's expended all that energy, all that effort, and in the end it has been rewarded with a fantastic drive to victory. And indeed, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on at Bathurst. I think he could be a huge contender for an upset in taking the wins away, just simply because of that outright pace and also that consistency, something which is so critical at any circuit, but especially Bathurst. But now we come from our Pro winner to our Pro-Am winner, and that is Jeremy DeBova, who we're just going to bring into the interview room. Hello, Jeremy, can you hear me?
Hello, Paul. Good evening. Yes, I can hear you.
Jeremy, another classic Jeremy DeBova style drive from start to finish to bring home the win in the feature. How does it feel to be on the top step of the podium at Motegi?
It feels amazing again. After Zolder, it's now the second win overall in my class and third place also overall on the podium. So cannot better for me here today.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And it was a very well managed race, but it wasn't an easy race. You had a very close run with Phil McDougall and Jean-Louis Deschamps, particularly in the opening stint. Just take us through that from your perspective, because you always seem to be in control of the pace, but Phil McDougall in particular was always right behind you.
Yeah, Phil was also in the first laps, 1 second behind me and push off a lot to me. But I try to keep control to my tire because I know the tires have quite difficult here. But I tried to keep a good pace, and I saw he also have to push to keep that pace on. So that was for me the important thing to know and try to have constant lap times.
Indeed, we saw that consistency in the lap times throughout, and we mentioned a number of times on the broadcast with regards to the tyre wear in particular. But one thing I have to ask is, when Phil McDougall came in at the 22nd minute of the race, did that change your strategy or make you think about how you could potentially change the strategy to beat him? Or were you thinking to yourself, okay, well, he's decided to go for the undercut, that's not a concern?
But the BMWs, you never know. For me, was important to see what he do after hit stop, his lap times, and I saw my lap times, and I saw it was quite okay. But for me was more important what Jean-Louis did, because he is a whole weekend very fast here, and I want to see if he come close. We have a fight for him for the second place in the championship. I am also on P4 at the moment, so I also have a chance to get P3, I think, with the battle with Hicks for that podium. So it was not a normal race to understand, but I think for me also I can be very happy with my result here.
Oh, indeed. And well, in the end, coming home with the win just ahead of Jean-Louis Deschamps. It is the case now that as you go into the final round, I believe you'll have moved up to, or you'll be very close to P3 in the championship and well within arm's reach of taking on Jean-Louis Deschamps. Just take us through those final 10 or so laps where Jean-Louis Deschamps was right behind you, but always around 8 tenths to a second behind. He never seemed to be able to get close, and then on the final lap, he seemed to drop it.
Well, like you say, he was complete at the last 15 minutes. He was just in, I think, second half behind me at maximum. So I know he drive very well here also, and he had a lot of push to me. But I tried to keep to control everything and see what he do at the last 5 minutes, because I know he can also do something more at the end of the race. But I see then in the, I think, third last corner he make a spin. So then was it for me easy to drive to the last chicane and go over the finish with the win.
Well, indeed, where it showed, because as you crossed the line, we saw you there flash at the lights, very happy in the cockpit. And now looking ahead to Bathurst, the season finale in Australia next week, how are you feeling for the Mount Panorama circuit?
I think we have to need to again to start with another strategy. It was, I think, we need 2 hours driving there, to up to the hill and down to the hill at Bathurst. So we have to keep the car out of the wall and see where we end. And I hope we have a good result also for me and the team, because I saw at the IM classification that the team also do very well here. So we try to keep that to the next race.
Oh, well, it will be great to see how yourself and all the team get on in Australia in a week's time. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room. And more importantly, well done once again on a fantastic, deserved win.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good evening.
All the best.
Thank you.
So hearing there from Jeremy De Bova, very pleased with that result. And I think one of the key things to take away from there, you can hear it with regards to when he was talking about the battling with Phil McDougall and Jean-Louis Deschamps. Of course, we talked about Phil McDougall at first, but his focus after Phil McDougall came in was more with regards to what was the battle with Jean-Louis Deschamps and making sure he finished ahead of the driver he's trying to hunt down, who's second in the championship. And doing a quick bit of mental math, I do believe that Jeremy De Bova now has jumped ahead of Ben Hicks in the hunt for second, and he is now the main competitor to try and snatch second away. But we will have to wait and see when those standings are updated in a week's time when we go to Bathurst. But it is looking as though Jeremy De Bova is now really in that prime position. But to be fair, with Jean-Louis Deschamps getting the win in the sprint, it's not as though the gap has closed that much. And as a result, it's going to be a need for Jeremy De Bova to pull out all the stops and pull out an absolutely huge result at Australia in order to be able to take what is that all-important second place, that run-up spot in the Pro-Am Championship. But now we go from our Pro-Am winner to our Am winner, and that is Kurt van Hoornacker. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll bring him in here. Hello, Kurt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
Kurt, a brilliant drive from yourself in the feature race, which saw you in the end bring home the win, albeit I think might have been a little bit of mixed emotions at the end with Navarro dropping things on the penultimate lap. How does it feel to have brought home the win at Motegi in the feature?
It's very good today, especially this one is for a good friend who passed away today. So, Carl, thank you very much for everything. This win is for you. Thank you also, Jeremy and Navarro, for the good race today. So I'm very, very, very happy for the win. It was really, really close, especially the last lap. Navarro and I are just, I think, half seconds away. And yeah, I first tried to get them on the inside, but it didn't work. So the next lap I did the same, but on the outside of the corner, and it worked perfectly. And so I had to P1.
Oh, indeed. It was close between the two of you throughout the race, and we'll come to that very shortly. I'd just like to say, firstly, that it's very touching that you're dedicating your win here to the passing of your dear friend. And whilst, obviously, we in the audience don't know the exact circumstances behind that. I can appreciate that it must be a very emotional time for you right now. So thank you for joining us in the interview room when I can appreciate your emotions may be a little bit mixed. But coming on to the race. So at the start, yourself and also Navarro both had very good starts to the race, although Navarro seemed to get a little bit of a jump on you. Just take us through the opening portion of the race, because you seem to have very good pace.
Yes. At the start, Navarro had the outside of the last corner, so he was on green flag direct away. So I cannot, I was not able to have the same speeds at the top speed at the end. But we decided to keep it clean and just do our race and making some progress to the other drivers, and it worked out. Yeah, unfortunately, I made a mistake later in the race. I had on turn 3 some oversteer, and I lost the speed there. But I'm happy. I was able to drive back to Navarro. He also made a mistake, I think. So we had a clean fight at the last lap. And he had also a good pit stop strategy that was different than me. He was taking early pit stop, and it was a good move from him. So we didn't discuss anything before the race when who are going to doing the pit stop, but it was doing the race on our own.
Oh, indeed, and it did seem as though the two of you, for the majority of the race, whilst you had different strategies, were in a world of your own in terms of the race. And I do have to ask, when you're racing with your teammate, is there a sort of a mentality to say, okay, for the first 40 minutes of the race, we don't battle too hard, we just work together, and then it's that final 20 minutes where the battling begins? What's the dynamic?
Yeah, we try to have some communication, of course, because we don't want to drive each other out. It's the worst thing you can do with your teammates. So, but I think in the first stint before pit stop, I already had the advantage of Navarro, but it was a clean move. If it is too dangerous, we don't do it, or we do a communication before. If it is too close. It was the same at the last corner, at the last lap. There was enough space. If there is enough space, we almost do no communication. But if it is a fast corner and we need to go with 2 cars wide, we do a communication, because otherwise you can have problems.
Oh, most definitely. I could appreciate that. And the last thing you want to do is take your teammate out whilst battling one another and getting good results. And now, with the results that you've achieved today, you're well in the hunt for 5th in the championship. Yourself and your teammate are both battling for it. So what's the plan going to Bathurst in a week's time? It's going to be a showdown between the two of you for who finishes P5 in the AM Championship. Who's it going to be?
I don't know. I don't know the circuit. I need to learn the circuit. It was the same today. I just tried the track last week. So for the first time, it was for me like a kart track. But I will see next week. I have seen it on television, but not tried it before. So Friday, I do my first practice. And I don't know how fast Navarro is. He was fast today. I think he was the more faster than me if I see his lap times. But I don't know next week. I cannot say. We will see.
Oh, indeed, we will. We look forward to it with bated breath. But in the meantime, congratulations on your win in the feature race and a brilliant drive. And thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
So hearing there from Kurt van Hoornack, and you can hear the joy and the enthusiasm in his voice, and the fact that not only in terms of picking up the win, very pleased with that win, and it gives him a great score going into the season finale, but also the joy of essentially racing with his teammate Navarro de Bova through and through. And that dynamic, as he was saying there, and the fact they're constantly communicating and running on different strategies, but communicating and working together to an extent in order to make sure they're gaining that race time and only really battling towards the end of the race when they can afford to battle and when the gloves can come off. But again, that is what it's all about, sometimes working together to get great points and then having that little squabble, making sure not to take one off so they both get great points. But of course, one wants to be ahead of the other. And it'll be interesting to see which one of the two of them finishes in P5 in the AM Championship, because it's between those two effectively now come at the end. I think George Band having an outside chance despite dropping a number of points tonight. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for, and thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out, our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk, or alternatively our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom Lobby 1 would not be possible, and that is Apex Racing Academy. ApexRacingAC.com is their web address, and now we wait a week until the season finale. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, in a week's time we go down under to Australia for Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. You know it in short as Bathurst, the circuit that takes no prisoners, and we'll be going racing out on Wednesday the 9th of February 2022 in the second of our 2-hour super endurance events. It's the one race that's worth double points, and as we can see here from the exterior cameras of the reference lap, which we'll be right on board with, as will be brought to you by the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver of Ben Hicks in the Pro-Am class. This circuit is an extremely challenging circuit, likened in a way to a street circuit given how tight it is, albeit it's up and down the mountain. This circuit shall be a test of our driver's ability in qualifying, because qualifying is so critical in terms of where you place yourself on the grid for going racing here, given how difficult it is to overtake, plus also the art of overtaking on the straights, particularly in the slipstream, in the run up the mountain and down the mountain, because once our drivers go onto the mountain, overtaking is nigh on impossible unless you have a huge advantage and you are extremely brave and considerate of your fellow driver. But still, that is in a week's time. If you're eager for racing action, be sure to come back tomorrow. We'll be taking a look back at how Lobby 2 got on at what was Twin Ring Motegi. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from us here at Next Gen Racing tonight. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. We have been Next Gen Racing. And until next time, as always, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.